call the meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Donna, will you call roll, please?
Mayor Aziz? Mayor Aziz?
Here.
Councilor Boland?
Here.
Committee Member Caddy?
Here.
Committee Member Chloe?
Here.
Councilor Elliott?
Here.
Councilor Fisher?
Here.
Councilor Furlow?
Here.
Councilor Grizzle?
Here.
Committee Member Port?
Here.
Councilor Reeskamp?
Here.
Committee Member Elfers?
Here.
And Committee Member Gestrin is absent.
Okay, thank you very much. And first up, we have the selection of the Budget Committee Chair, and I'll open the floor for nominations for the chairperson.
I move Councilor Elliott.
Oh, no. I'll second that.
Citizen member.
Citizen.
Supposed to be a citizen member. State law.
What is?
Yeah.
Citizen.
I did not realize
I've
that.
never known that.
Did not know that.
Okay, I retract my motion.
Retraction accepted. That's okay. I don't want to be against law.
I nominate Robert Furlow.
No, it has to be a citizen, not a elected
I'm sorry.
official.
I didn't.
You're not a
That's okay.
citizen.
Not elected.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we're not citizens.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Nope, I know.
First time.
Okay, let's try this again. I will accept a citizen nomination for the Budget Committee Chair.
It's not coming through very good. Are we turned on down there?
Yes, we are. Did you test it
Hard
before?
to do
Have
the
we
first
tested?
time citizen.
Yeah, it's
That's harsh.
not coming in very
Come on. I nominate KJ
Okay.
Olfers.
Wave at me if it continues,
okay.
and I'll look at it.
I tried.
KJ Elfers has been nominated and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will hand the meeting over to you.
Okay, do we have,
Let's see, do you have, here, you have that?
Yeah, okay. All righty. All right, gee, thanks, guys. We'll move on to approval of the FY 2017-18 budget minutes. Thank you.
I move for approval.
We have a second.
Don't we elect the secretary next?
Yes.
It didn't say that there, but we will.
Yeah, right under
does.
nominations.
Oh, budget secretary, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. Rebecca keeps telling me to make it shorter each year. Do we have a nomination for budget committee secretary?
I nominate Rebecca Grizzle.
Second. All those opposed? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm trying to mix it up a little bit.
Nay.
Okay, now we will move for the approval of the FY 17-18 budget minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so done. And we're going to go into the presentation of the budget, department budgets. First up, administration and city attorney.
actually, we need to go to item 5.
Oh, God.
Presentation.
I'm all over the map today. I'm all over the map. Sorry about that, Gary. Okay, presentation of the summary by Gary Marks, our city manager, Matt Apkin, finance director.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'll direct your attention to the screens up above. I'll be presenting you with just an overview of the city budget and urban renewal. So we'll just go ahead and get started here. So we're here today to talk about the fiscal 2018-19 budget and our proposed budget overview. What I'll be presenting to you are two budgets that you need to look at and approve. The first one, of course, is the city budget for the coming fiscal year, And as part of my presentation, I'll give you an overview of the city budget, and then we'll kind of zero in on the general fund, because a lot of what we do happens in the general fund, so a little closer look at that. And then we will be looking at our urban renewal agency budget. Now, for sake of argument, the state actually has us approve 3 different budgets, all related to the different districts that are in the agency, but we'll be taking a look at the agency budget or budgets, however you like to look at it. So, the proposed city budget, what you'll find in there is that our levels of service are either the same or improved with the new budget. There's one item I wanted to call out that happened during this current year, and that is our fabulous new library director was able to look at the way the library was being scheduled with personnel, and was able to find a way to increase hours from 43 to 46 hours a week without any change to the budget. There was also a change during the year at the library to convert some on-call positions to part-time. So I wanted to make you aware of that, because that is an increase on our level of service. We added an hour to Tuesday, an hour to Thursday, and an hour to Saturday. And as I drive by the parking lot, I think it's been really popular, because our library is used a lot by our community. There's some other things you'll see in the budget where we're making some advances in levels of service in our police department, on the economic development front, a small step in the senior services area, and we'll cover all that here in just a moment. So the good news is that our contingencies, our reserves are overall up 8.3%. 3 years ago, the City Council set some goals, some financial goals for the city budget that we build up and then maintain a 19% fund balance. 17% of that is an actual reserve, 2% is contingency in the general fund. And I'm happy to tell you that goal has been met. We're actually at 26.8%. At least that's our projection to the end of this current year. Operating appropriations in this new budget are up 6.5%, and I'll do some minor dissection on that as we go through. Capital investment is down almost 45%. Our capital consumes more than a third of our budget, that's really good. Most cities would die to have that much capability of investing into our infrastructure like we're doing. A lot of this that you're seeing here has to do with our water treatment plant. As I think everyone's aware, we've been well underway with the construction of the new plant this past year. We're down in capital investment because of that. And you recall from those of you who were here last year, the budget went way up because we were putting in 30 to 35 million extra dollars for the plant. And now we've spent a good amount of that. Some of it is returning in this new budget. So, going on, overall net staffing is increased by 5.5 FTE, and that is inclusive of a new sworn police officer. In this case, this is being made possible through a contract with Lynn County Parole and Probation, where they will be using 3 of the jail beds that we have at our city jail. The money that we're receiving for that will allow us to hire one more sworn officer and increase from 1 to 2 officers who will be regular attendants at the jail. That's a very significant change for us, because it will allow our patrol officers who are out around watching the community to not report into the police station to check the jail on an hourly basis while this new officer is on duty. We'll still have some hours, probably the wee hours of the morning where we don't have an attendant there, but this is a great advance for us, and it will help us keep our officers on the street and active in the protection of our community. We're adding 2 water plant operator positions. This is something that's been long planned with the the completion of the new water treatment plant. In the past, the council's aware that we have operated the existing plant on a contract with a third-party provider. We're looking at running the new plant ourselves, thus the 2 new positions. That's been figured into our finances for years and has been part of our rate structure, and so we're well prepared to handle these 2 new positions. We're not going to fill 1 position in engineering, so that's a negative 1. With the shifting around with the water treatment plant, and then filling another position in the department, Ron has elected to not fill one of the positions that's left vacant with all of the changes coming this year. So we're adding 1 parks maintenance position. That's in recognition of the fact of our expanding relationship with the school district to maintain their properties. That comes with extra funding as well. This is long overdue. We're adding a position to our IT department. So that's going to be very helpful to everybody at the city. In our strategic action plan, we have an item in there for an economic development position, and we'll look at this a little bit more further on in the presentation. And then we're adding a half-time senior services position over at the senior center, and this is going to help Kendra a great deal in handling folks at our front counter at the senior center. So that's not the end of the story. As far as the police department goes, Chief Stevenson and I and Matt Atkin, our finance director, we're planning on a mid-budget year review of how our marijuana money is coming in. To date, we only have 2 payments from the state of Oregon. The process of gearing up and figuring out policies and so forth at the state level has been long and drawn out. And so as a result, the 2 payments we've received are what I would call irregular payments. They're payments that are over several quarters, and they're all balled up together, and there's no way to know how to use those numbers to project forward, well, what reasonably can we expect to receive on an annual basis. So as soon as we start seeing regular quarterly payments, we'll have a basis to make some estimates. We believe that's going to start, I think, maybe even the current quarter. We're hopeful. And that will then give us, by mid-year, we hope, enough information to take a look at that. I feel like what I'm seeing that we may be able to add another officer. This would be an officer who would be on patrol. That is key because at the last city council meeting, Chief and I covered a new analysis of our staffing in the police department as far as time that is obligated against time that is non-obligated. Obligated time being the time where officers are responding to calls, and unobligated time where officers are able to just simply patrol around and have eyes on the community. According to the chief and the research he's done, his goal is to get to 50-50, half obligated, half non-obligated, and with the addition in the jail. And if we can do this one, we believe the numbers support that will be there at that ideal staffing level. So, and I should say this all came about from a presentation that I did in February. Councilor Bolin expressed some concerns about that, and Chief and I took that to heart, and we went back and looked at our staffing a different way. And I know, Councilor Bolin, you weren't there, but I think we're moving in a good direction with all this. So that's what we're intending to do. And I should mention too that when we talk about marijuana money, part of the rules and the regulations that are being handed down are limiting us as staff in complete transparency about what we receive. The state is concerned with shielding businesses and communities, particularly smaller communities like ours, where there are so few shops that publishing information about marijuana money could expose the individual business success or struggle of, how they're doing with their businesses. So there's some restrictions being put on us on that way, but we will be looking at that, and if we internally believe we can support it, we will be back to the city council to talk about adding yet another police officer. So, also in the budget, we have covered 8 of our Lebanon 2040 community strategic action items, and I'll detail those in a minute, and also 5 of our city council goals. So, looking at the strategic action plan, strategy 4.4, to create urban renewal districts for downtown and Highway 20 strip. We've funded some dollars into the general fund there's some studies that we have to do, and then some process we need to go through. So this will be a very important piece of our effort to focus on downtown, as I think most of us are aware. That was a major thrust of both our vision and our strategic plan, that we bring a new focus to downtown revitalization. And we'll see in a moment, it's a duplication, but that's one of the council's goals as well. So the downtown urban renewal district will be particularly instrumental in reaching several of the other strategic action items in the plan, because that's going to be the funding source for some of those. Strategy 5.5 is to develop a Ralston Park improvement plan. That's, again, something that we've been looking at for a while. We've been able to put some dollars in the budget for that. 8.2, maintain library and expand program offerings. This is one I show every budget year because it's an ongoing goal for us. The expansion has actually happened in this current year, and we're bringing those forward, and we're certainly maintaining the library, and I think we're doing a fabulous job with that due to Kendra and her very able staff. Strategy 9.5, build a community garden. If you go over to the area there off of Russell where the garden is, you'll see that a good part of that has been accomplished already with new curbs and sidewalks around the perimeter of what will become the community garden. Our plan is to finish the garden this summer and going into the fall months. So by next growing season, that should be in place for folks in the community to benefit from that. Strategy 11.2, develop a strategy to address wetlands mitigation. I've updated the council in the last few months about the first step of this process, which has now been completed. That was to redelineate our wetlands that are located in our industrially zoned areas of town. Most of that's on the west side. For those of you who aren't aware, we have approximately 280 acres of undeveloped flat industrial land, most, like I said, most on the west side. Nearly all of it is impacted by wetlands to the extent that it has been a great obstacle for us to attract industrial development to those properties and the jobs that it would bring with it. So we've completed the redelineation. The first one done several years ago was based on some loose definitions of wetlands, and we've used a tighter, more scientific approach this time, and we are seeing some reductions in the number of acreage in what we've delineated as wetlands. So that will help. The second piece is what we've budgeted in the budget this time around, and that is to advance into a study. We'll probably hire someone like Econ Northwest, which is an economic analysis firm that helps put these sorts of plans together and figure out a way that we can address the issues that are creating barriers to our development because of the wetlands mitigation. That may be building our own wetlands mitigation bank, but yet it may be other strategies as well. So that's something that I'm looking forward to, and hopefully by the end of this year to come, we'll have an effective plan in place. So, moving on, strategy 12.1 is to create a community economic development position. About 40% of this is funded from the general fund, about 60% out of the Northwest URD. Why Northwest? Because that's where our wetlands are, and I envision this position being instrumental in not only helping us put the strategy together, but then implementing it, and then to begin a more aggressive program than we've had to date of trying to attract businesses to those properties. The 40% funding from the general fund, we see some great assist coming to the community generally, of course, with some of that directed to downtown, and many of the programs in the strategic action plan will be assisted with this position. One of the positions I'm eager to have this person begin working on is our downtown building restoration program. We're about to receive or have our first project get underway with the Tremels building through the King family. So I'm excited about that one, but I think we can put more horsepower to it. This position will help us do that in terms of promoting it actively to building owners and then following through that interest to get them through the bank loan process and into the actual improvements. Strategy 13.4, of course, is build the new water treatment plant. That was on the list last year as well. We're looking at completing the project in December and, in theory, firing up the plant in December. One of the key aspects of this budget is that we will be running both plants, the old one and the new one, we believe for 6 months, because when you fire up a new plant, you never know what kind of bugs or what issues you have to address to make sure that it's functioning properly. We don't want to shut the old plant off, find out the new one doesn't work as we thought it would, and create a problem for the community. So we're taking on some extra expense, and I'll show you the impact of that later, because we're going to be there's going to be some dual operations going on. So we're expecting the plant to come to completion in December, and so we could expect reasonably between December or January going into June, which is the end of the fiscal year, that we'll have both plants running, or at least until we feel very comfortable that the new plant is performing as we hope and expect it will. Strategy 15.4 is maintain police funding and staffing commensurate with community growth. Actually, even with the add to the jail, incrementally, it's a little bit better than our keeping up with community growth, but certainly if we're able to revisit this mid-year and add the additional officer, we will actually be doing better than just maintaining commensurate with growth. Once we get to that level, the ideal funding level, then I'm hopeful that we'll just simply be able to maintain that and keep up with our community growth. So let's go on to the city council goals, and there are some duplications here from what I've just addressed. That's because they are very important items, and the council recognized that along with the community as well. So downtown revitalization is one of the council's goals. We're addressing that in 3 very obvious ways in this budget. One, of course, is the new economic development position I've spoken about. The continuation and continued funding of the downtown building restoration program, and then the creation of the downtown URD, which I've already addressed. Another council goal is the water treatment plant construction, and we've talked a bit about that now. We've funded a city facilities master plan. The council and I both have concerns about our current city hall building and its appropriateness for our operations going forward. We don't know what we're going to do about that, but this will allow us to put together a methodical plan and analyze what our options are and hopefully move forward on that basis. Also, implementation of a wetlands mitigation strategy, which I've already addressed through the strategic action items, and then maintain police staffing commensurate with community growth. So that's all we've addressed in the budget as far as goals. So our proposed budget, it covers the fiscal year, which according to state law is July 1 through June 30 of next year. Provides all of the budget authority to provide our services and all the projects that we're anticipating for this coming year. It basically contains 6 funds, which is can be a little confusing because there's actually 52 segregated self-balancing divisions or departments within those funds. So functionally can feel like we have 52 funds. That is down significantly from last year, where we were somewhere in the 60s, and the year before that we were in the 70s, I believe. So it has been a concerted effort of ours to try to simplify the budget and bring down the number of segregations we have while maintaining, well, actually, when we clarify and simplify the budget, we're actually improving our transparency. So the total budget amounts to $54.7 million. That's our spending authority. I'll get into that in just a little bit more. And it reflects a almost $14.9 million reduction or decrease from the prior year. Much of that has to do, again, with the fact that the water treatment plant project has progressed. So the 6 funds I've spoken of, you see them up here on the screen. Each of them are appropriated in the amounts that you see. I don't know that I'll read through all of those, and if you're curious, the trust and agency fund is a little bit of an oddball fund. Compared to the others, it's very small, but state law requires us to segregate money paid for bail and set that aside separately from everything else. So we end up with a 6th fund. But you then again see the total number of 54.7 for the overall budget. For those of us who are graphically oriented or visually oriented, this is how it breaks out. Again, it's very encouraging to see that we're able to invest so much into infrastructure, which in a large way is represented with our capital fund at 23% of all of our appropriations. That's impressive. Of course, that has something to do with the water treatment plant, but we also have several other projects we're anticipating this coming year. One is a continued project to take the improvements that you've seen on Russell and continue them from the intersection of Franklin east to the first intersection with Mountain River View. So that will be a nice addition for that neighborhood. Several residences along there. They'll get a new street, curbs, and sidewalks all to the urban standard. So if you like what you've seen up to Franklin that happened this past year, that project's going forward this year as well. And then there's some projects the council will be looking at next week for J Street and one other that slips me right now. So we do have some other projects that account for the 23%. So let's look at our appropriated budget versus our effective budget. What this is about is our internal transfers. This is money that we move around from fund to fund. Maybe the general fund will provide some money to some other fund to accomplish something. Well, when we do that, we end up double counting our money. We account for it coming in as a revenue into the general fund. Then we account for it being spent out of the general fund to the other fund. The other receiving fund then counts it again as a revenue, and then when it's finally expended to the outside world, it's counted as expended again. So that can kind of artificially inflate the budget to some extent. We like to be transparent and reveal that number, and I've compared it to fiscal year 18 that we're in right now. You can see there's the big number for the last year's budget of $69 million. The 54.7 for this year is our appropriated number. Then if we back out those internal transfers, it brings us down for this new proposed budget to a hair over $49 million, and that represents a 23% decrease from the current year that we're in. Again, a lot of that has to do with capital spending going down. Again, for the visually oriented, that's what this looks like on a bar chart. So this chart here lets us look at the operating budget. It's where we take out all the capital and we say, what does it actually cost to deliver the services with our infrastructure to all of our residents and citizens? Well, last year we budgeted almost $21.8 million for our operating budget. We get that number by taking out our capital appropriations and our contingencies that are not yet appropriated to services. And then we compare that to what we've proposed for this budget. It's actually coming in at $23.2 million. When I first saw the number of 6.5% growth, I thought, well, that seems a little on the high side. And then it occurred to me, well, we're running the water treatment plant in a duality situation, both old and new. That's having an impact on us. So I went back and I looked at what those increases were to run both plants. And if you back that out, the rest of the budget is seeing a 4.4% increase. When we think about inflation at maybe 2%, in fact, our community is growing at least 2%, I think the 4.4 number makes a whole lot of sense about where we are as a community in trying to keep up with our levels of service. So that's how that looks, that 6.5 with the dual plant operation in it, which, by the way, next year when we're here, we should see that number come way down because we'll be operating one plant at that point. So let's move on to the general fund. The general fund has 13 active departments on them in it, and those are the ones there. Generally, municipal government funds, services in a general fund that don't have significant, dedicated, specific revenues. When I say that, if you think about our water system and our water utility, we have specific money that we can bring to that. In the general fund, we have general property tax dollars, franchise fees, all of these that aren't directed at any particular service, and so those are generally driven towards those services that need general funding, and those are the ones you see up here as the 13. So the general fund totals a little over $11 million in the proposed budget. It provides our budget authority for those 13 departments that I reviewed with you. If you're curious about the 5.5 net increase in personnel, if you take out the bits and pieces of what the general fund is funding for those, we're funding a new police officer. That's actually offset by the revenue that we're going to be receiving from the parole and probation folks. So that 80% of that, I think, is going to be funded through that new contract. IT, we're at about 57% of that being funded in the general fund. Economic development, about 40% of that's in the general fund. And then our senior center, our half-time senior center position is funded in the general fund. If you total that all up, it's about 2.5 new FTE. So in addition to delivering the services that the general fund supports, it also provides some financial support to other areas of the budget. This, in a large measure, are some of those transfers, those double-counted monies I talked about. Those are things for those who get in the budgets, the Information System Services Fund, the PERS Bond Fund, Equipment Acquisition and Replacement, and our Custodial and Building Maintenance. Money is sent out, all totaled about $844,000 to support all of those needed items to make our city work. So this is how our general fund looks compared to last year, up about 4.6%, which kind of trends along with the 4.4 we looked for the overall budget. So I feel pretty good about that number. Wanted to take a minute and look at our fund balance issue. A number of years ago, the city got into a bit of trouble mid-year. This is right before I arrived as the city manager. There had to be layoffs in the middle of the year because the city was about to spend its reserves and go in the red. And at that point, after I got on board, the council said, we want to have some financial policies so that will never happen again. And so we did that. We put those in place in early 2015. And as a result, we've budgeted to add to our reserves, especially in those first years when I was here. And as you see from the chart, our reserves went up rather quickly. Last year, I came to the budget committee and I said, our balance has gone up to about 25%. It's that figure right there. And we felt like we needed to spend some money so we weren't just locking funds up that should be benefiting our community because we had achieved our goal. We wanted to burn some of that down. So we did that, and then lo and behold, this year we performed better than we anticipated in the budget. And so we ended up at about 30% for both spending and revenues, so, or for beginning and ending fund balance. So we probably could have spent more money. So this year, we're going to be supporting some of those new positions that I've talked about in the general fund with some of this money. I'm feeling very good that we're going to be able to keep on the positive side of our 19% goal. And then we just projected out in the future that 19% will remain there, but I anticipate it'll be somewhat above that level. There is a chance that if we spent everything in our appropriated budget that we presented, that we would be at 19%, and if revenues didn't come in exactly as we expected, it might be a little bit lower than that. But I want to remind the council and inform others that prior to the 19% goal, the city's fund balance goal was 10%. So even at that, I think we're going to be doing good. Even in a really bad scenario, we would still have the buffer that we want to address some sort of an emergency situation that would come up, and that's why we want to have money in a rainy day fund, if you will, to make sure that we can address issues without a panic situation. So, moving on to the urban renewal budget, or budgets, however you want to look at it. It covers the same time period as the city budget. It provides all of the spending authority for our urban renewal activities. And it has 3 segregated self-balancing districts or divisions, and the state would probably even call them budgets. So, but we have 3 different segregations going on there, and when you look to approve or recommend the budget going forward to the council at the end of this meeting, you'll be asked to vote 3 times. So all of that totals up to $5.6 million. That is a decrease of about $2.2 million compared to what you looked at last year. That is principally because of the work that you saw with the extension of Airport Road there at Safeway, the improvements on Russell Drive, and the work that has been completed so far in the community garden. That money has been spent out of the Cheetah Lake URD, so that fund has come way down, and that reflects in the $2.2 million reduction that you see. So these are the 3 different funds or budgets that we have in our urban renewal agency budget. The Northwest Lebanon URD fund, that's the district that covers the north and west side of our town, which are our industrial lands. It takes in the LBCC Automotive Technology Center, takes in Latacrete, the whole Lowe's facility, all in that district. And this district was, well, for those of you who may not been here at the time, that district was instrumental in making some of those developments happen. The Cheetah Lake URD is budgeted this year at $1.1 million. This is the budget that I referred to just previously, that we sold bonds in the prior year, and we funded the improvements for Russell Drive and the extension of Airport and the community garden. And then the North Gateway URD fund is the one that has helped facilitate the Samaritan improvements, where we see the college and the hotel, the meeting center, and so forth. So all these districts have done great things for us in terms of providing the public infrastructure needed to facilitate those private developments. So total, again, for all of those is that $5.6 million I spoke of earlier. So if we want to look how those relate to each other, the Northwest URD is by far the biggest of those 3. That is the district that, as we move forward with plans for how to address our wetlands issue, that one will be coming to bear. And I feel good about that because we do have some reserves in that fund that might be able to help us address the wetlands issue. So more on that to come. So just like we did on the city budget, we want to take out the transfers that are double counted, so you can see the real number, or what you can consider our authority to spend externally outside of the agency. Last year, because we had the projects on Russell and Airport Road, we were at $6 million. This year, we've come down a tad to 4.3. That's the visual interpretation of that. And so then I like to wrap up my presentation by showing you the whole package, that being the city budget at 54.7 million, urban renewal at 5.6. That gives us appropriated budgets of almost 4 million. Take out all of our double counted transfers, and the effective overall budgets are $53.6 million. So if you're wondering how the urban renewal looks compared to the city budget, it's about 9% of all of our appropriations. So relatively small, but mighty in what it's has been able to do for us. So I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the folks who made this presentation possible. First, of course, Matt Apkin, our new and awesome finance director. I have to give Matt some extra credit here that he only came on board with us on December 18th of the past year and was able to ramp up quick enough to put this massive document together for all of us, to work with all the departments, to help coordinate a bunch of information that he wasn't familiar with before. And he pulled it off and did so in a great way. So thank you, Matt, for stepping up and getting that done for us. And then, of course, his finance department staff that I know that he relies heavily on, particularly during these busy times. The department directors and their support staffs, they put in a lot of extra work every year to get the budget done. A lot of the detailed analysis and the information that goes into this budget, it's the result of their hard work. And then, of course, my assistant Lee, who I would feel lost. She keeps me on the right track and helps me keep focused on where I need to be. So it was a collective effort, and I'm grateful to all of these folks more than they'll ever know. So this is our budget, and I present it to you, and I'm available for questions. I think what we want to do first, though, is we want to hear from all of our department directors. You will have a chance to ask them any particular questions you wish. Each of them will provide you a very general overview to try to hit the high points of what may be happening in their areas of the budget. And once we get through that, and during that give and take, if you have questions, please feel free to ask those. So at this point, I'll pass the mic back to our budget chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, presentation of the department budgets. We will start with administration and city attorney by our city manager.
Okay, here I am again. This time I'm representing my administrative department. So if you turn to the general fund tab in the budget, and then flip the pages to page, go to page, what is that? 36.
36 in general?
Yes, 36, the general fund.
Yep.
That's the purpose page, which just generally gives you the general lay of the land as far as what this department does for the city. I don't intend to go and read through all of that, but let's flip the page over and look at the actual numbers. The center column that reads 2018 budget, that's the current budget that we have. You'll see there, and I think you'll see in other areas, that some of our personnel information there at the top, once we implement the budget, it gets all broken out. But when we approve and adopt our budget, it's a lot of those, the support items to compensation are given as one number, and then we distribute that throughout the year. So anyway, we'll start with personnel, which is that section 110E1. The current year, 2018, we're at $360,000. We're down a little bit. That's because I think a difference in finance directors. I think our past director added more leeway, if you will, into the numbers to make sure he had enough. I think Matt has taken a sharper pencil to things, and so, but as far as staffing goes in administration, it's unchanged. And then under the rest of the operating dollars, if you go to the bottom, the gold highlighted numbers, the budget for this current year was at 423. If you go over to the far right, the budget we proposed you is at 414. Again, just, I think, a sharper pencil. If we then move to Fund 120, so flip past 116, Legal Services, we have a contract with the Morley Thomas Law Firm, and that kind of dictates how we budget. We've reflected that in the numbers that you see here. Current year budget was approved at 181. The next year's budget, 186, which I think reflects a small adjustment in the contract that we have with our law firm. So if you have any questions about either of those divisions of the general fund, I'll be happy to respond.
I had a small question. I think I tagged this page, I think because outside attorney's fees went from 20 to 30,000, and I didn't remember if we were, what caused that?
The 20 you're seeing there, are you talking about the estimated column second in from the right?
Yes.
Okay, that's where we think we're going to spend this year. We actually budgeted 30.
Okay.
So we think we're going to come in under, but we're budgeting the 30 again for the coming year, and I would hope that we'd underspend that too, but we want to be prepared. You know, legal is something that we don't know what's going to happen in a given year before it happens. So that's the explanation there.
That makes sense to me now that I see it.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll,
Before we move on,
Yeah.
I just noticed that we actually don't have a specific section in the agenda to go over the revenues for the general fund. And I don't know if we want to do that before we go through kind of the rest of the general fund, or if anybody has any questions about the revenue section of.
You have your mic on?
My mic is on, but I don't, can you hear me?
No, doesn't sound like it's working.
Could you give us a summary of that? That was going to be one of my questions.
Okay. Is this better?
Yes.
There it is.
So, a general summary, we're going to budget that the property taxes from last year's budget to this year's budget are going to increase by approximately $260,000. Part of that is from underfunding the Northwest Urban Renewal District. We did that last year. We're going to continue to do that this year. That provided us with some of that extra revenue. That is still a pretty conservative number that I put out there just to make sure. Going forward from there, our licenses and permits, some are going up, some are going down depending on the type of franchise fee. That's where most of our franchise fees are, so we're increasing that slightly. We've seen a little bit of an increase in our fines and forfeitures that we're getting over the years, so we've increased that slightly. We have moved, we have included the state IGA for the jail person in our revenue, and also the school resource officer we've moved from a separate fund to in the general fund because that's where the police is paid out of, just to try and clean it up a little bit. We've also included the entire contract for the school district landscape maintenance. Miscellaneous is just kind of what it is. It's a little bit less in the budget than last year, and then transfers are based on kind of the transfer worksheets, which you can find just before the general fund tab. Anybody have any questions about that before we move forward?
okay, thanks, Matt. All right, next, legislative and city clerk's office, Linda.
Can you hear me? Good afternoon, Chair Olfers and the rest of the committee. The legislative budget can be found on page 60, and it includes the costs associated with the City Council and the City Clerk's office. I do not have a lot of changes in this year's proposed budget. While materials and services decreased $550, the overall budget increased only to a little over $2,000 from last year's adopted budget due to salary and cost of living increases. But other than that, there's not a lot of changes. So Jason, do you have any questions?
She knows you.
How about anybody else?
I do. We talked about budgeting for meetings and conferences for League of Oregon Cities, and we increased that, but then I completely spaced that we did that. Does this include us being able to attend League of Oregon Cities?
Probably not for everyone to attend, but if there's something that you have, I can also bring, sometimes I can bring them here to us at a lesser cost.
I just think there's value in our counselors networking with other counselors at an actual league function, so.
I'll chime in and agree with her. Most cities, particularly our size, have council members coming to the League of Oregon Cities conferences, and since I've been here, we really haven't had that. So I think there is some great benefit to be had if the interest is there.
And in the past, we only had one person interested before.
She's speaking again now.
Yes. So I can definitely talk to Matt, and it wouldn't surprise me if I couldn't fit it in with the current budget to have at least one or two people go.
Okay.
With Rebecca, though, right?
Yeah.
Incentivizes the whole thing.
Send you both out of town.
Any other questions?
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Next would be Human Resources, Debbie Schimmen.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we all doing today? My budget doesn't have a lot of changes compared to the previous year.
What page is that?
Oh, I apologize.
40.
40? Going back.
Why are we doing that?
So in terms of expenditures, contract services is at $8,000 for the year. That reflects mostly recruitments. I project that we will have a significant increase in the recruitments this year compared to previous years. Just since last July, I've done over 13 recruitments that I didn't anticipate this year, compared to 3 the previous year. So I think that reflects a lot of baby boomers are retiring, and so we have a reduction in workforce out there that can fill those positions because they don't have the same qualifications necessarily that older workers do, and so we have a reduction in qualified applicants. Most of the recruitments that we have had this year, we've had to go out and do a second recruitment. For example, the assistant city engineer, we didn't get enough qualified applicants, so we reopened the recruitment and we're doing it again. The other increase, the operating expense is at $11,000 this year. That reflects employee rewards, balanced retirement, health and wellness benefits. And then also everything else is pretty consistent with what we did the year before. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them for you regarding human resources.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing? Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, next will be Information Technologies and GIS. Brent?
Thank you, Chair Elfers and Budget Committee.
I have two budgets. One is the GIS fund. That's on page 145. The first page there just goes over the biggest change we're going to have is a slight increase in staffing because the one additional employee that Gary went over during his presentation, we're going to allocate part of them to GIS. So on page 146 and 147, those are our totals. Our totals from last year, if you look at the middle column in 2018 budget versus our 2019 proposed, this budget will be $4,400 less than this current year. So that primarily is because we did the city flyover this last year and we completed that. That's the main looker was the city maps that have been produced, but we use those maps on a daily basis, both for fire and for the city, and there's a lot of activity that goes into keeping that data up. The next fund is the IT fund. That's 542. That starts on page 148. That's just the cover page. The next two pages, 149 and 150, it goes on to page 151. If you look at page 151 at the bottom, if you want to compare our numbers, there's a $71,000 increase from 2018 budget to the 2019 proposed. That again is going to be reflected in an additional staff person, and there is one particular capital expenditure project that's a fiber project that we're planning on putting out between the new treatment plant, and it's going to go east of Sweet Home down River Road. That will benefit the water treatment plant, but it also benefits the city in general, and it will indirectly benefit the fire department as well as the school districts. And so part of that increase is reflected in that capital project. Other than that, the numbers have remained fairly static over the last year. And any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we'll move on to planning and building with Walt Wondolowski.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission, Chairman Elfers. We have two services to look at here. First of all, planning is on page 46 to start with. The planning portion of the department does the usual planning things. We look at staff reports, make presentations to the Planning Commission, City Council, etc. We work with our customers and clients within the city. There's really no change in terms of our goals or objectives. As Gary noted, there will be a staffing increase. We will be adding one more FTE for the economic development position. I think we called it community development catalyst, I believe is the term we're going to use. The big change from last year, other than that position, in our O&M, for some reason, advertising costs increased significantly, so we included more advertising for this coming year. But basically, except with that staff change, our budget is pretty much the same, and any other increases are due to staffing. So with that, any questions?
Well, you guys are pretty slow right now. Is that correct? I mean, you guys...
If you talk to the ladies that work there, they would strangle you.
They would take issue
Yes,
with that?
they would take issue. No, what happens is, right now, I would have to say from the planning aspect, we're probably a little slower than last year, but understand we do planning work a year or two ago. Now those building permits are coming in. And don't forget, one other thing, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up. One other thing I want to emphasize, while this is the planning services, that department is the support staff for maintenance, for engineering services. If there's any capital improvement projects, it is done by Sierra and Tammy. They put those booklets together. You want to get a sign permit, you go through us. You want a temporary use permit, you go through us. You want to put up a banner downtown, you got to go through us. You want to have a public event, you go through us. There's a lot of things the folks there do that go beyond planning. So yes, we're quite busy. The planning aspect itself slowing down. The minute I said that about a week ago, talking to my wife, I now had 4 applications came in, and we have 3 cases on the May hearing. So it goes like this.
Don't let them strangle me.
Okay.
I say that because specifically because of planning. In my mind, I would think planning is very slow. I have waited in line in that office. I know they're busy, and I know
Yes.
they're very nice ladies and very
Yes.
efficient. Don't let them be angry.
No, I will definitely share that with them. And the other thing, too, is that my position is only 0.8 FTE. So overall, it has worked out well. So we managed to get the work done. There are times that right now with the enterprise zone application, a little stressed at times, but we kind of get things done.
Okay.
Okay? Any other questions? Concerns, issues? Okay. The next one is our building services. This would be found on page 134. This is a dedicated fund. In other words, all the fees that we receive for our building permits go toward providing this service. Again, our clerical staff does the support work. We currently contract with Northwest Code Pros to handle our building official, building inspector, and plans examiner role. There may be a change in this budget, and this whole situation is constantly in flux, but the state recently came down with let me clarify, the Building Codes Division came down with new administrative rules that effectively prohibit us from hiring an outside contractor to do the building official work. We may either have to hire someone full-time, or we're going to have to do possibly an IGA with another community to provide the building official position. And this thing has created immense heartburn with a lot of communities. We could deal with it. We have the budget, but there's a lot of communities much smaller than ours that it is just going to be a disaster.
What's their reasoning for that?
We're not too sure. Boy, I want to be careful. Let us say that we were shocked and very surprised, and we've yet to find a compelling reason for the change. The basis of the change is that it's a Department of Justice opinion that we cannot use a private individual to make discretionary decisions. That was the basis of it. Building Codes Division took that and ran with that, and now that opens up all sorts of questions. You can't hire a city engineer as a consultant, a city planner. I mean, my prior career was being a consultant to 11 different cities, city attorney, that sort of thing. This is opening up an amazing can of worms.
And it was in the legislature, wasn't it? And it failed the legislature, so they're doing an administrative rule.
Precisely, without any oversight and without public hearings.
Yeah.
It just kind of ran through. So we have to scramble for about the next 2 months. So again, I just want to put the committee on notice, and in effect the council on notice, that there may be some changes by the time we get to the council in June. But we will keep you up to date on that.
Are you saying, is this thing on? Are you saying that there will be a resolution of this issue in a couple of months?
No. It's just that we're looking at some options right now. We're hoping for a resolution. There will likely be some legal cases going forward, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that. So we have to prepare. The last thing I want to do is shut things down or give it to another jurisdiction. We have to serve our citizens and the customers in this community.
So currently, we contract that out.
Yes, we do.
Outside
Yes.
inspectors.
And it has worked wonderfully. The gentleman who does it, Sean Eaton, has done a great job. He He works with the builders, he works with everyone, and I mean, I haven't heard a bad word about him, and he works well with staff. It has been a great relationship. That will change.
Yeah,
As it currently
I'll
stands.
add to that. The idea of contracting out building inspection services is a very common practice for mid-sized to smaller communities. Communities where there's not enough development activity to support a full-time position. Even with the activity we've seen in Lebanon, we still are defined in that category. We use about a half to 60% of his time in a 40-hour week. And one of the great advantages for communities like ours to contract is that the building industry ebbs and flows. There are times when we're ramping up, we're getting more permits, there's more inspections. Other times when a recession happens or the market goes soft and then activity drops way off. If you've hired a full-time individual for that position, and this happened to me in one of my prior communities, I had a gentleman who was my inspector who for several months literally had nothing to do. And finally, we had to decide that we were going to eliminate that position and start contracting. So when we have a contract, we have a great situation where we pay as we go, we use as we need, and it's much more effective with our dollars than having a person, particularly during the soft times where there's no activity for them to work on.
So what we're hoping for is that this will resolve to our favor, but we have a couple of options to consider. I also want to emphasize that the key issue here is the building official. We can still contract with Northwest Code Pros to do the inspections and the plan reviews, which is about 95% of what he does, but we have to look at the issue of a building official. So again, I have it set up in the budget this way. We will keep it this way until we hear otherwise or get this resolved. So I guess I'm just making sure that both the Budget Committee and Council know that there will likely be changes within the next few months. And I don't know what those changes are going to be and how it's going to affect the budget.
Well, I have a friend who does building in Corvallis, and what he tells me is that, I don't know exactly how this all works, but evidently to get an inspection in Corvallis, sometimes you have to wait a month to 6 weeks to get an inspection because they're so busy, or their employed inspector is so busy. Whereas I checked in the building department here, and they said, oh, usually within a week you can have one.
We've actually had people come in on a Monday afternoon, they get the inspection Tuesday morning. We also turn around building plans for single-family homes within a day or so. We're busy enough to hire someone, I should say contract with someone and keep them pretty busy, but we're not so busy that we need a full-time position. This was a solution in search of a problem. I just don't see what the issue has been.
Okay.
We can be rather cynical and also nefarious about some things here, but I'll just kind of leave it at that. I made suggestions to Gary that he rejected, but rightly so. So anyway, any other questions on building?
Nothing else? Thank you, Walt.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we'll hear from Senior Services, Dial-A-Bus Senior Trust with Kinbra.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I am going to hit some of the highlights for the Senior Center and the Dial-A-Bus and the Senior Center Trust Fund. Senior Center Fund is in the General Fund 190, which is on page 76. And as Gary talked about in his presentation, the biggest change to that budget is a proposed additional part-time position that would help up at the front counter with people coming in for information and referrals. People aren't sure what resources are available to them, and we have all that information there that we can explain to them and get them to the people that they need to be talking to. They'll help answer phones and assist at the front counter and work on other various projects and tasks. So we appreciate your consideration on that addition. At the Senior Center this year, we'll have over 40,000 people coming in for classes, activities, events, workshops, the inquiries and referrals, which is a 2 to 3% increase over last fiscal year. We've done a good job of adding some new classes. We have a brain fitness class, a music and movement class, Spice of Life, Crafternoons, Tai Chair, and Chair Chi, and those are just a few that we've added, but those have been very successful and well received. For example, with some of the exercise classes that we've added, it helps with falls prevention and people living longer independently and not have to look for assisted living or moving in with families or things of that nature. But they've gone very well. Cascades West Council of Governments operates the meal site at the Senior Center and also delivers Meals on Wheels to the community. And they will have served just under 40,000 meals, both on site and in the community this fiscal year. And that's a great program going well. They're always looking for volunteers if anybody's interested. But those are the highlights for the Senior Center. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, this budget will allow you to do your job instead of sitting up front at the desk and answering the phones for several hours.
Absolutely, and I do have a big stack of things and lots of projects to work on.
I'm sure.
So I'm excited.
Yes.
I think that we don't always think of the senior center is not always as sexy as some of the other things we, I think you do more with less than any place else in the city. I don't think we always appreciate what you do. And so, thank you. I think you do so much with such a little tiny budget, and it's really important.
Thank you so much. And Rebecca, our activities coordinator, is amazing. I know several of you in here know her.
Yes.
She does a fabulous job. We've also been very fortunate to have some great volunteers, and they've helped us out immensely as well. So, things are going well. On to the dial-a-bus, which is Fund 569, and it is on page 173. The dial-a-bus budget is comprised primarily of state and federal grants. This year will provide over 22,000 rides, and over the last 5 fiscal years, our ridership has gone up by over 38%. And that's usually with 2 buses out there on a daily basis. And actually in the last month and a half, 60% of the time we've had to add a 3rd driver out there just so we can, meet the demands of the community with needing to get where they need to go. We recently went through a transit development plan process, which we presented to City Council in the fall. Through that process, they came up with a new service design for a new deviated fixed route, which we will be starting very shortly. I'll be able to announce the date probably by the end of this week. But it's ready to go, just a couple more things to finalize, and I'll get the word out to the community, and should be up within the next few weeks. So we're very excited about that, and people are anticipating that new service. And the idea behind that is that it will decrease the demand on our demands to respond rides, which are, of course, more costly. So in budget 569, you'll see an increase for the cost of that service in the contract services line item for some additional drive time. And then we also have $78,000 on the revenue side and the expense side to purchase a replacement bus next year. We've received preliminary word from Department of Transportation that we have received that grant, so it just has one more process to go through before we get the official word. But I'm fairly confident that will remain in the budget. One other thing that I wanted to mention, we currently have in our budget this fiscal year and for next fiscal year, we had our dispatcher and scheduler as a 0.8 FTE. That position is currently vacant. So I approached Gary and Matt just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. We didn't know that position was going to be vacant, and we have an opportunity with some grant funds to increase that FTE to a full-time person, and those numbers are not currently in the budget. The budget was printed, so I did want to mention that. Matt, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to kind of come back with some numbers so that you as the Budget Committee have something to think about. And hopefully approve the budget with this adjustment included in it. So I've, because of the vacancy of this position, some of the benefits are unknown. So I just want you guys to take into account that this is assuming the worst case scenario, because I'd rather budget for it. Then we don't have to come back and make any adjustments if we ended up hiring somebody that, say, had a family, so the health insurance was higher than what the previous person was. But this would be about a $39,300 difference to go from a .8 position to a .9. Only $13,300 of that is from wages. The rest is, like I said, dependent on who they are, what level of PERS, if they already have a level in PERS, what type of health insurance they get, that kind of stuff would affect it. So like I said, this would be worst case scenario. I wouldn't assume it would be that much, but I'd rather budget for the worst so that we can make sure that it's
What was that number again? 39.5?
$39,300.
300.
Matt, that's the number to move from .8 to 1 full-time.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is all, as Kendra said, part of a grant. So this will be completely funded by a grant that we get, whatever amount it ends up being. That's why I definitely would rather budget high and make sure that it's already in the budget.
So, Matt, you gave us a number for a .9 increase.
So,
Did you mean 1 FTE?
so, well, it's going from .8 to 1. So it's a .2 increase in FTE.
Okay.
And the increase in the wages was how much?
$13,300.
So in the end, we will need a motion for a budget amendment when we get to that
Correct.
point,
To approve,
increase.
when we get to approve the budget with an increase of $39,300 to the dial-a-bus fund.
To 569.
Yep.
And again, we do have grant funds to cover those expenses. And that was all that I had listed for the highlights for the dial-a-bus fund. Does anybody have any other questions? No? Okay.
Kendra, what's your rotation on your dial-a-buses? Is it every 3 years?
Rural Senior Trust.
Rotation for,
The buses?
as far as when we replace them? The useful life of the size vehicles that we have is a minimum of 5 years and 150,000 miles. And we're over. They're in good shape. We keep on top of our preventative maintenance, so we certainly use them as long as we can.
Are we able to market those to some place?
We certainly can. They can be put up for sale, and we can also trade them in on a new vehicle.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? The last fund is Fund 835, which is the Senior Center Trust Fund. It's on page 205. This fund was established to receive and expend donated funds for designated purposes and some of our supplies and activities for classes. And we do not have any significant changes to this fund. That was it?
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you have any plans for the reserve that you have that keeps building up? What are you going to do with it?
The reserves in Fund 835?
Balance.
When we received a large bequest back in 2006 for $202,000, we expanded our parking lot, and that was definitely money put to great use because it's often full. So we do have quite a few things on our wish list, if you will, things that need to be fixed, improvements to the building. One of them is expanding the air conditioning in our building. Some of you may know, when you walk into the first part of the building, there's our offices up there, the library area, and a couple of classrooms, the pool room, and a exercise room. All that area is air conditioning, but when you walk down into the auditorium, which is where we have our large events, and there's also 2 other classrooms in the back that get quite a bit of use, as well as the kitchen for the meal site, none of that area is air conditioned. So I have been talking to Jason and Jason in our maintenance department They're going to be looking at things to see how we could go through a process of determining what it might cost to add air conditioning to that part of the building. Of course, we would also have to consider our operations going up on a yearly basis, because being able to cool that part of the building is also going to be, fairly expensive. So another thing that we're wanting to do is the floors down there are, it's a cement slab with tiles on it. It was built in the 70s. So we're seeing some areas that need to be repaired, and maybe we need to talk about what we want to do with either repairing it, replacing it, what that might cost, and so forth. So potentially some of those dollars could be used for that. I also have about $100,000 in the senior center equipment acquisition and outlay program. So that's what some of that has been saved for, is for the air conditioning and some other improvements of that nature.
Thank you.
Yeah, it gets pretty sticky in that area.
Yeah, it really does. And, what we use the funds in 835 for are, we have a lot of activities. We have a lot of seniors coming in. They'll have some coffee in the morning. They'll play Wii. They'll be on the computers and whatnot. Rebecca puts on some really great events. So we use some of those funds to pay for some of those supplies and things that that we use on a day-to-day basis instead of coming out of the general fund.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll do library and library trusts.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Library General Fund, you'll find on page 65. We don't have any significant changes this year. I will highlight 61,250 Department and Operating Supplies. That is has an increase this year, and that is that's our biggie. That's where all the fun stuff happens. Everything that circulates to the public, books, movies, music, everything that can be checked out is purchased out of that fund. Everything we need to make those items circulatable, locking cases, book jackets, spine labels, all of that comes out of that fund. Reference materials, both in print and digital, comes out of that fund. Our access to Library to Go, where we patrons can download ebooks and audiobooks, comes out of that fund. And also programming. And based on the 2040 vision statement, we have made a concerted effort to increase family and adult programming. I'm happy to say that this year, as of yesterday, we have a 46% increase in programming for families and adults. So that does not count events happening in May and June. This Friday is Star Wars Day, May the 4th. If you're a Trekkie or a Star Wars fan, may the 4th be with you. So that's Friday night, 6 to 8. Darth Vader will be there. So that's where you'll see that increase in that fund. And in that increase, we're basically returning to previous funding levels. If we go back to fiscal years 2012 and 13, 2013 and 14, that's where we were prior. So we're gaining back some lost ground, and we're putting that money to good use. The other difference you'll see is in 61,560. That's a significant decrease. That is building maintenance. Last year and in previous years, we had approximately $17,000 that was going towards an HVAC contract that we will not be re-upping this year because Jason in the maintenance department are going to take over for us. So those are our main differences. No anticipated changes in staffing or anything like that. So any questions as far as that one goes?
Your parking lot is always full. You're going to be the next parking lot we're going to need to expand. I go by there all the time, and your programs are extremely successful.
Yeah,
So,
it's been great. We've had a good year. I have a good staff. And Gary was kind enough to call us out. I have to return the favor and say that all the other departments have been so great this year. The responsiveness from IT and maintenance, if anything that comes up, they're on the spot. They're so helpful and collaborative. So has Gary and Lee and Linda and Debbie and Tina, bless her heart, has answered so many questions for me and Matt. So it's been a great first year for me at the library, thanks to all of their help. So. Well, if there are no other questions on that, we will move on to...
I'd just like to say, Kristen, that that's the nicest place you can walk into. The staff is great. They've got smiles on their faces. They're not gloomy. Real pleasant. I'm out there about every 3 weeks at least, and they're a great bunch of people.
Yeah.
And you're doing a great job there.
I agree. I'm very fortunate. They're great. I have worked in lots of offices with all women, and it's never this pleasant. Women can be so catty. I don't know how we got such a good group, but everyone is just kind. And
Well, if you haven't been out there, you should go through and just see how pleasant it is out there.
yes, please visit anytime. The next fund is the Library Trust Fund, 830. That's on page 199. I kind of think of the Library Trust Fund as a pass-through. I don't know if Matt would like that terminology, but basically any donations, any grants, any incoming funds that we receive go into the trust, and we then spend them on what we need. So specific programs. Oftentimes we get donations specifically towards the collections. They'll say spend this on movies, spend this on audiobooks, whatever, goes into the trust, and we immediately turn around and purchase what they've requested. So no significant changes in that fund either. Any questions about that? I should also say we just received a $10,000 grant. Just found out this week. So, and that was reflected in this current fiscal year. We had already budgeted for that. So, okay. And then the other fund, the Harriman Trust Fund. That's 833, and that's on page 202. That was originally the Library Building Trust Fund. It's now called the Harriman Trust Fund. That's a finite amount. No more will be added to that. That fund is specifically used for materials for the children's room. This year we'll be using it to purchase some shelving for the children's area, and we also use that money to buy to replace the toys and puzzles and the various things in the children's area that get a lot of use. When they get worn, we purchase new stuff out of this fund. Any questions on that? Okay, and lastly is Fund 838. That's the Snedeker Trust Fund, and that's on page 208. This trust fund was specifically for children's and reference materials, also a finite amount. When it's gone, it's gone. We have been using this fund every year to pay for our subscription to Ancestry, which is a very popular ancestry genealogical site. People come in to use it regularly, and it's very expensive, and it goes up every year. So I anticipate about $2,200 for this year for Ancestry, and that'll be coming out of the Snedeker Trust. And that's all of our stuff. Do you have any questions?
Okay, no questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take about a 15-minute break right now. So we will reconvene in 15. And then we will hear Frank tell us all about his fringe benefits.
These trust funds, and with our pooling of funds, do you allocate interest received back to the various funds on a proportionate basis?
Yep. So when we get interest from the bank, we do an allocation based on how much cash is in each fund.
and it goes back into those funds on an allocated basis.
You receive that on a quarterly basis, or?
Well, like our LGIP account with the state, we get it monthly, and same thing with, I don't know that we get any interest from bank, but
She's always stirring up
we get it on a
trouble.
monthly basis.
Monthly. Okay.
I didn't see anything. Sorry. Chairs are bad.
I'm sorry.
It was okay. It was about 10 minutes in, and I was just like, oh, this is going to hurt.
I don't think it was. No, no, the light was not on.
I'm going to leave that on.
Okay.
So if you want to talk again.
Okay. Well, okay. I thought I pushed it, but
It's easy to miss, especially.
I just talked louder.
All right.
I guess that'll do it too.
Oh my God. That gorgeous man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I moved, but I'm still in the same district. Yeah, I moved down on to Mary Street.
Oh, okay.
One of those townhouses down
Oh.
there. Yeah.
Were you in a house before?
No, I was in these apartments right down here on Sherman and Fifth.
Oh, okay.
So I walked over here to them.
How do you like the new place?
I do like it. Much
Good.
more room. Yeah.
How you doing, Floyd?
Oh, not bad.
Have you moved yet?
No.
No? Are you planning on it still, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, someday.
You know, I must be getting old or something that I don't work as fast as I used to.
I know what you mean. Yep. Yep.
You know, I hate to put dates on things, but I anticipate by
It's gorgeous. How you doing, Robert?
How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Actually, it took me 3 months ago, but I said, yeah, you can still fucking make an ass. Because position for several months. They finally got it there, and their funding's running out. I don't know about that. I know she's been doing some good things.
She has been, I agree.
Yeah. I don't know if she's been able to get to the point yet where she's working on that. You know, I could probably support it, but I think we need to send a message that you need to start. Third year.
Oh, my goodness.
See, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I don't even know how the awards break out in town. I'm not even sure what living, who my representative is.
Well, somewhere.
Is there a map roaming around somewhere?
I thought there used to be one in this building right here.
Yes, it should be.
It's,
So,
that's not it. I
probably
can show you this map here.
Turn this into something positive.
This way. We need to wait and see what they've done first. My original inclination was to use mediation.
That's mine.
Yeah, that's my first go-to.
Yeah.
Assuming that situation supports it. So, hey, man, yes. Are we done? The white king? Yeah. He comes up to me.
It was all just me waiting. She would have done it. She would have done it way back.
Why is yeah, I just belly up to the bar there and then we make that. So if we're being asked, we're asked for 20. They want to fund their downtown ministry, which they've done for the past 2 years for us. We had a couple of folks finally got a winner. She's really doing a good job. So now they're going to come back again and say, hey, can you do us for another year?
All right. I just saw the
So I wanted to give you a heads up because
Really good. Networking with other that's, you know, it's not, it's education too, and I've gone to things that were good, but to talk to other city councilors and talk to what they're going through, and is, you know, there's things you can glean off of that, someone you can call, relationships you can build. I think that's worthy. It's worth me taking vacation time ahead. My real job.
Unless you have another
What's that?
When did you show up at once?
That's enough. I'm in the middle of a federal exam right now. Being here
Are you really?
is a relief. It's like the only time I can remember being, yeah, sure, I'll go to the, happy to be here.
I read through stuff like
I didn't realize, I looked at the minutes and I forgot that I nominated you last year.
Huh.
Isn't that amazing?
I made an issue of it, I believe, because I think I usually get nominated for that because I'm a woman.
No.
I think it's sexist.
No, it's not true. It's because.
I feel like that way we can use financial district and change budgets.
Secretary?
Yeah.
I don't see you furiously writing. That's good.
No, I just, I talk too much for that.
This is focus of our strategic plan. You know, lacking a better strategy.
Yes, I just talked to KJ. Yeah.
Oh, my.
What am I doing here?
You gotta leave?
You're not my neighbor.
No. You done with this stuff, Paul?
And he left, so now he didn't even, that wasn't
And
even
those
funny.
rollout
Yeah.
track things. That is
Cool.
Yeah, it's,
very excited about that.
Those were a big step.
Festival's made some nice, positive decisions along with the city.
I saw you posted about some improvements to the accessibility out there.
Yeah, Jamie had approached me at the expo, and I said, I've been wanting to do that, and the foundation has to have the money. Now that we're city, we really want to have accessible.
Yeah.
And so Jason, I talked to Gary Jason, and so we're doing paving of that road going all the way further out of the building. So that'll be one. And then off of that will be a couple offshoots of pavement, and then a whole area where the, I think it's gonna be where the food is. And then there's gonna be handicap parking, it's gonna be 8 spaces, and then there'll be handicap overflow next to that.
You don't have to crowd anymore.
Beach access.
I think he left.
And they're gonna roll it out.
What? Jason, he left. He's not coming back.
Yeah, he's.
That's awesome.
And it's just kind of a first step. This
Frank, what page you on?
71.
71.
I've already had people commenting on my page about how they're going out there, how horrible it is, how upset they couldn't go there. It's gonna be really nice.
71.
Long ways away from when the, I think the couple years when we moved, the festival, you were just talking about it, and you couldn't get out there, and we got down into there, and it was mud and disgust. It was so bad across the river.
And I've never been.
Yep.
When I moved here, that's what it was. Awesome. And then we moved out to Cedar Lake, and that's not oh, and then there's gonna be a spot.
And you could raise a family on the wages.
Yes.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah, I stole Jason's chair, and it was going to be funny until he left.
And the joke was on you.
And then, yeah, oh, great.
Cleared up outside?
Okay, let's get started again.
Yeah, the mic, you gotta be.
Next, we'll hear from Chief Stevenson on the Police and Police Trust Fund.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. They always do this to me. You guys go, and then take a break right when I'm ready. And then I forget everything when I go out in the sunshine. So we'll be going over the police budget, page 71 to get us started on that. Just a few things to highlight in that particular area would be, Gary did so well in explaining the FTE that we'll be getting, and that position will be reserved for the jail. So for the first time in our history, we'll have 2 full-time individuals manning the jail, which is a huge benefit, and will allow my patrol officers to be out and about instead of coming in every hour on the hour to check on our inmates. So that I look forward to that and seeing where that goes. A few other things just to highlight going down the list. Crime prevention and 61125. We have a $5,000 increase in there, and that is due to some of the funds that we'll be getting from the traffic safety class that we do monthly, sometimes twice a month, depends on how many people are caught not in the distracted driving era. So they have the option of coming to a class, and we teach that kind of comes from all over the area, Corvallis, Benton County, Lynn County. We're one of the only agencies right now that are putting this class on. So a lot of that funding that will be used in that is going to be cycled right back into the safety for bicycle helmets, class supplies, basic items related to anything from safety. So contract services, Kendra already stole my thunder saying that Jason and Jason have taken most of those responsibilities over, so you see a little bit of a deduction, around $11,000, I believe, from that. Department operating expense, we threw some money in there for a canine program. Lexi Honor is off and running. We're hoping to get her certified in September. Through the Tribute to Honor has been so gracious in helping us fund some of the supplies and the materials for the canine. That's coming to an end with a year, so I threw some funding in that arena to help in the future training costs of Lexi and the vet bills and the food. And I didn't realize how much stuff comes with the canine. It is quite
She's
impressive.
amazing. She's
doing
amazing.
She really is. We had a conference come into town. I don't know if you folks saw all the cop cars. By the way, that was the safest the city's ever been. We had members from all over, Corvallis, Washington, Portland, all with canine dogs. And I've never seen the streets so bare in my life. There was no bicycles out. Everyone was wearing their seatbelt, not talking on their cell phones. But I mention that because Lexi was able to participate just a little bit, and she was the youngest, only female police officer, canine, and she's performing at a level that was very impressive. So we just got to get through some certification courses with her, which will take some time and some additional funding. So we're getting close. Education reimbursement, there's actually 2 staff members that are taking advantage of the contract, which states we pay for a certain percentage for them to continue on their education through college. So I have 2 people taking advantage of that. Upped our training budget just by a little bit, and of course, we got to keep on top of all the certifications that come along with police work, as well as some specialized training in child abuse and drug detection and whatnot. If there's not any questions on that, I'll move on to the 515 account.
Could I just say something? It's
Yes.
sort of related to you, but what you've mentioned, the Jason thing that they've been talking about, that Jason, the second Jason, is the new position that we have from last year, which is doing what we were hoping it was going to do, is we're doing things in-house and saving money on some of our contracts. So I really appreciate that for all of you, and Gary, you guys doing that.
Yeah, what the mayor's referring to is the electrician that we hired in last year's budget. Some of you will recall that we added an electrician, thought that we would save money by doing that, and we're saving more than I thought we would. Just the HVC alone, I didn't know he was going to be able to address that beyond just electrical stuff, but we've been able to let go of our contract we had with a third party, and we're saving money on that. So it's been really a good experience.
And I know from a police standpoint, anytime I've ever called for some assistance with anything, Jason Rush comes, and he's amazing. Wherever he came from, that was an awesome find. So he actually saved us. We had a windstorm, him and Brent both. We had a pretty good windstorm and knocked out some power. Our generator kicked on, and there's something that wasn't, some switch wasn't kicking over. So the police department, we had backup power, was not powered. So we had lights out and whatnot, and I was running around in a panic. Brent was running around. It's like Superman over there. Him and Jason Rush flew over and fixed it within a matter of minutes. And so, and Jason just walked right in there and fixed it without any issues. So that was very impressive.
I can answer the question, where did we get him from? We stole him from the city of Corvallis.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I do have a question. On page 73, it talks about vehicle maintenance and also vehicle leases. Do you lease all your police cars?
We are currently leasing. We are moving away from that. We're going to go lease to own. And the reason we did the leasing option way back when, it was just for the mere fact we were getting old parts and the older cars, and we were not unable to maintain them and have the proper cars out there for patrol. We're at a point now where we're getting, we have enough vehicles now, we just need to get through all the leasing, but we're leasing to own instead of just leasing.
Oh, okay. But so those leases don't cover the maintenance like they do in a...
Correct. Yeah, they don't, yeah.
So you have to do your own maintenance
we
on
have to do our own maintenance.
Okay, I was curious as to why there were two different expenses for leasing and maintenance.
Right.
And you also, if you're in the transition, I guess that explains that too then.
Yeah, my hope is here within the next 2 to 3 years to be done with the leases and and have owned, so we should see a decrease in that line over the next few years.
Okay.
Yeah. Are there any other questions I can answer? Moving on to 515, which is page 130. That is the Youth Court Fund. For those of you who don't know what this is about, this is the Police Department Youth Court. We started this about 2 years back, and the goal behind it is to basically give an alternative court within the criminal justice system that juveniles who commit some misdemeanors or violations can come through this court system in front of their peers and usually explain their actions to the peers and try not to, the whole point behind that is so we can have that connect with the youth and to also not get them totally involved in the system, but give them an opportunity to better themselves. And I don't know about the rest of you, but you stand in front of your peers and explain why you stole something or did something that it's been hitting home, it's been successful. We haven't had a whole lot of people coming back through that we recognize. So it's been a good thing that's going on. And a lot of the funding that comes in through that are usually for fines that their own peers have set on them. They have to pay fines, and we use that money to buy refreshments for the volunteers who come through there. So, and that is also, we have assistance with Jessie, who works for our own law firm here in town. She's our judge. So, yeah.
How long do the youth serve?
It's usually, it's depending. So sometimes they get sanctioned to serve on
the members of the court. How long are the peers on?
I'm not sure. How long? It's for as long as they want, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's no set term?
No set term, and it's more of a volunteer basis, and sometimes it's sanctioned. So,
How are the numbers, the amount of students going through this? I know in the beginning we were hearing some updates. I hadn't heard anything in a while. I'm just kind of curious what.
Yeah, I usually throw an update, or try to update once a month. Usually we're ranging from about 4 to 6 cases that we're hearing. And we're just now diving into some of the distracted driving citations that youths are getting. I'd like for them to start, and that's through, again, a partnership with the courts and having, instead of receiving a hefty fine for speeding and distracted driving, they'll come through the pure court system as well. So, we should start seeing an increase with the amount of kids coming through. But, a lot of the cases that we're hearing, unfortunately, have to do with marijuana usage, and we're seeing a lot of youth coming through that are using marijuana. So, but we'll hopefully see a decrease in that. Any other questions on that? The next one is 516. No real changes in that.
What page?
I'm sorry. This is page 132. This is reserve funds for police, reserves, volunteers, and a lot of the donations, people donate money. There's also some activities they do to raise money. It gets put into this item, and it helps defray some of the cost for reserves, boots, equipment, trainings, and et cetera. No changes on that from last year. Any questions? Moving on, 562, and that's page 168. Equitable sharing. This is clearinghouse used to track funds received through U.S. Marshal's office that's resulting from drug seizures and whatnot. No real changes in that. 564. Someone have a question? Oh, okay. 564, page 170. This is the school resource officer. I believe Matt's addressed that. Go ahead.
You guys will notice in this one that the budget for the current year is pretty much just transferring out the beginning balance. The school resource officer is one of our police officers. It's normally paid out of the general fund, and we receipt the money in this fund and then transfer it to the general fund. I've tried to just kind of eliminate that extra task of just transferring things and just putting it in the general fund. So you will see in the general fund a line item that's specifically for the school resource officer on the revenue side, but the expense is just in the normal police personnel expense.
The revenue we're receiving from the school district.
Right.
Correct.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
If there's no questions in that, we'll move right into 820, which is page 188.
Chief?
Yes.
One second back on the school resource officer.
Yeah.
How are we on negotiations with the school district as far as, are we good for a couple of years, or where's that at?
Well, it's a rotating contract, IGA, that we have with the school district, and I didn't hear anything back from the school districts as far as where they're at this year in their funding. So as far as I'm concerned, it's looking good.
Okay.
So.
What page was that on, Frank?
That was the school resource. That was 170, page 170.
But the answer to the question is it's a yearly contract.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a yearly contract. It just keeps going unless there's issues. And a lot of times, Rob, Mr. Hess has been pretty good about letting me know way ahead of a time about where they're sitting, and we have some negotiations, and we usually come to an understanding and we move forward. So, we have one officer right now dedicated to the schools, and he does all the schools, not just one school. So. He's extremely busy, but it's an extremely important position, especially in today's society. So.
I think we all know that,
yeah,
especially now.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. And he's been instrumental about, starting the lockdown, lockout procedures and trying to get them on a regular training basis. So.
I actually have reached out to the school district, and at this point it's in their budget, but it obviously has to be approved. So.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
Chief, is there a percentage that the officer is at a designated school site, or is it just as needed?
It's an as needed. He spends quite a bit of time at the high school. That seems to be where the focal point is. Yeah, he's tries to get to every school throughout his day. So just kind of depends. Yeah, throughout the day. It just obviously depends on his call load and what is going on. So, but yeah, he tries to make it a point to visit every school each day. So, no further questions. We'll move right into the 820 equitable sharing, which is page 188. No changes in there. There's no questions. Last is 829 account. That's page 195. And it's capital projects, and this is really dedicated to the community policing portion of our job. Is Shop of the Cop, National Night Out, Warming Shelter, and just miscellaneous community policing. This is all donations, grants, whatnot. No changes in that either. That is everything, I believe.
Any questions? Okay, thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear engineering, water, storm, and sewer, everyone's favorite subject, with Ron Whitlatch.
Yes.
Every time I write that check, I think of Ron.
Well, don't think of me. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Budget Committee members. Before I get started, Gary covered a majority of all the highlights in the department. So we've got a multitude of funds here in front of us that we'll need to go through. Is there any preference? Do you want me to go through fund line item by line item? Do you want me to just touch on some of the high parts and water? By page. Okay. We can do that for you. Okay. So let's start with 430, which is the water fund, which is on page, I don't have the page numbers memorized, sorry. It looks like it's going to be on page 199. So this year in water, we're proposing actually a 2.7% inflationary increase. That's actually been approved by the City Council already. We've been doing inflationary increases every year just to keep up with inflation. The water fund, the main portion of the water fund houses the, all of the maintenance, engineering that's associated with it, finance, administration, their salaries and whatnot are transferred out of there. Then if you move on to page 430, page 103. That's 102 and 103 is where we start with the operations of the water treatment plant. Again, Gary told you in his brief message that we were running 2 plants this year, this fiscal year. That's been budgeted for a long time. So we'll actually start operation of our new plant hopefully in December. And we'd like to have a 6-month carryover because chances are that we're going to have some issues during startup. That's just typical. Most every plant that starts up has got issues. So just to get everything timed. So that's been budgeted for, programmed in. We'll pay Albany again this year for use of the canal with our existing intake off at the 2nd Street plant. I think we've put a little bit of money in for demolition and whatnot to kind of mothball the existing 2nd Street plant. Very minimal. Until we decide exactly what we're going to do. But there are some things that we'll have to do over there.
When do you anticipate begin recruiting?
Probably tomorrow, if you approve this. It's a tough field, so we would, I say tomorrow, probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we would put the advertisement out. My goal would be to have those operators on board in July, no later than August. So that they can see the last portion of the plant being built and what they're going to be running, and just as to make sure that they're there. So we're going to start the recruitment process soon. Any other questions on that, water? The capital's gone down substantially. I think the next couple of months here with the water treatment plant, we're looking at about anywhere from $3 to $4 million a month in progress that's happening. So that's going to take that project down. Things are going well, and it's on budget and on time. So we're moving forward with that. So is there any questions about water? Any portion of water? Okay. No. Drainage utility, page 108. Again, we did a 2.7% inflationary increase to this utility, basically to keep up with inflation. This utility does not generate a lot of revenue in terms of what we can do with it. It's mainly for maintenance. One item of note this year, we will be spending a majority of the capital on the Cheetah Lake underdrain as per our agreement with the City of Albany to upgrade that. Looking now like that project's in the neighborhood of $500,000 to do, just with all the regulations and stuff. So we're in the process of putting that together, and we're going to actually change order it with our water treatment plant project. But a majority of the money will come out of the drainage utility for that. Any other questions on drainage? Okay. Wastewater starts on page 114. Again, the main portion of the utility is where our staff is housed, materials and services, the everyday life of how we operate the system. We did not increase this year with inflation. We had some things happen last year where we were able to save enough money that would have equated to a rate increase this year, and opted to not do that or recommend that at no risk to the utility. There are some big capital things that are coming up in wastewater, but we'll get to those. But the yearly inflationary are not intended to cover that capital. On page 118, sorry, I get the utility fund numbers mixed up. That's the wastewater treatment plant operations budget.
Right there. Okay.
We've assumed that, which we haven't seen yet, but CH2M Hill Jacobs, as they're called now, will most likely see a 3 to 4% increase. That's what the increase is there in the contract services line on them. I've also increased the capital line item in this by about $80,000 for next year. We've got some capital needs out there that, such as HVAC and some major pump replacements that need to happen. So that's increased a little bit on top of that. And of course, we have our sewer lateral program and small main replacement, which is on page 119. Those are pretty standard. It looks like it's gone down $250,000 this year, which that's not true. We just spent and carried over some of that money over the years, and we've actually spent a majority of it this year. And next year will be $250,000 for the main replacements and $90,000 for laterals. I should tell you that lateral replacement program is very popular. We're probably going to run out of money this year. Likely what we'll end up doing is funding some of it through our capital. We have people coming in all the time for failed laterals, and it's been a very successful program in reducing I&I and also helping the homeowner. So
I wonder about that, because I know every year we run out, and I wonder if we need to budget more for that. I've had people extremely happy with that and being able to have that help to get their systems back up.
Yeah. Well, and that's possible to do that. One of the things that we do, at least while I'm building the budget, I look at that, and we never know from year to year where we're going to land. And I always know that, wastewater is not a use or lose, and it always comes back into the fund, and it sits there in capital. So I know that we can get to, $30,000 or $40,000 if we need to go through the capital to do that. We could put it in that line item, or we could put it in the major line item.
But it doesn't really matter. We wouldn't come to telling people no at this point.
The way our ordinance is written, we would, but as staff, we don't do that. We find a way. I believe our ordinance says that and don't quote me on this, but we've read it in the past, that if we're out of money, it has to wait till next fiscal year until it's funded. We're in a position to where we don't have to do that. And I understand why it was written that way, because you've got a certain amount in this line item. But
We should revisit that, because you shouldn't have to go against an ordinance. If that's the way, if that's the way it needs to be, we should revisit that.
And we can definitely do that. We can definitely do that. But just know that we're not telling people no. If somebody's got a sewer issue and they've been paying their bill, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they have sewer service.
Question on the lateral replacement, is that north and northeast?
Majority of them?
Or is it just all over?
You know, yeah, I'd say a majority of it's out in this neighborhood out here and out here, probably east of the truck route a little bit. Yeah, I would say that that's the majority of it. We don't have too many. We've got a little bit over here in this neighborhood off of Oak Street where we see some, but it varies, you know.
Is the failure due to primarily to age or traffic on the street?
I think it's a combination of both. Most of it's age. You look at these pipes, and you've got so much root damage, and they're offset, and they're offset from the main. It's just there's a bunch of things, which increases our flow to our plant too, because we pick up a lot of groundwater that way. So.
Thanks, Rob.
Moving on to 475, page 120, that's our capital program for wastewater. Basically, all the money this year has been budgeted for the next phase of the West Side Interceptor. That's our big pipe that goes around town. Currently, we're at the intersection of Airway and Oak. We will probably begin design of that, which will be a contract design. Have that done here this summer and fall, and actually put that next phase of that project out to bid early next year. So we'll see how far we get, and that'll go all the way down Airway, and likely we will be rebuilding Airway Road when we do that. We'll take Airway Road, and our master plan calls for, I believe it's an arterial, 3-lane arterial, with 2 travel lanes, bike lanes, sidewalks. It's SDC eligible. I think it's about 50% SDC eligible to pay for that. So it's a good time to do it while the sewer's coming through there, because the sewer is going to pay for a portion of that road to be put back, and probably be a good time to do that, as opposed to just trying to find street money to do that. So that's capital. And then the 476 on the next page, 121, is just the debt service of the different loans that we have out and bonds. That doesn't change much on a yearly basis. Any questions on sewer? Next, we're kind of getting into some of the state monies that we get. Page, let's see if we can find it. Fund 550 is going to be on page 157. This is our state foot and bike path fund. We get a percentage of gas tax. I believe it's 1% of the gas tax comes to this fund every year. What we've done last year, we were able to do a bunch of sidewalk access ramps on Oak Street. We're going to put out another small project this year and do some more. We don't know exactly where the location is. We try to look for locations where high pedestrian activity, schools, such in downtown. We've got so many access ramps that either A, do not meet current ADA, or B, are not there, or a combination of both. And trying to find a place, it would take me about 2 seconds to go find a ramp that we really need to rebuild. So there is a really big need for some way for us to fund sidewalks and access ramps. Because with that money right there, we could probably fund maybe 10 to 12 corners. I don't mean intersections, I mean corners. So you break that down, and we've done 2 or 3 intersections. So there's a definite need, and hopefully the state starts sharing a little bit more money with that. The other thing is to ask homeowners to do that, but that's something we'll have to approach when we get there.
I would absolutely like to see some more money in that fund. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see downtown be more accessible for people. Even at my house, and I'm just using mine as an example, I can't cross the street across Williams. There's no curb cut. I can't cross the street that way. There's no curb cut. If I do go on my sidewalk and go around and go towards Grant Street doesn't have curb cuts all the way down. So there is no way to safely get from a block or two from downtown to downtown. And what I would really like to see is us concentrate on a couple blocks of downtown so that all people can access downtown better.
Sure.
And I don't know how we do that with money, but I feel that that's something that we really need to make a priority. Because I know you and I had talked, and we're going to look at good places that we can do this in.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because, like you said, there's some that there's just no curb cuts. So I know the ones that aren't that great, I mean, at least they're there.
Exactly.
But we really need to get somewhere there's actually some kind of curb cuts, because you can go down the sidewalk and I can go down Grant Street and then all of a sudden hit a corner and then there's no curb cut. Then I would have to backtrack all the way back over and go around across the street. So it's really frustrating.
We have a map. We have it mapped out of all the intersections in town, and we are in desperate need of that. It's a matter of how to fund it. We fund a lot of it if we're doing a utilities project. We'll go ahead and take the corner out and do the ramps while we're there. Or a road project, we're doing them, but that doesn't help in other areas where we're at. So.
And it doesn't help in a strategic way, like Paul's talking,
Right.
like taking the downtown corridor and like strategically
Agreed.
expanding in a way that has a plan.
Sure, absolutely.
We should mention the state is going to be stepping up. They recently lost a lawsuit on this subject.
Yes.
And they've picked a few communities around the state to do a pilot project. We're one of them. I think they're coming in to do, how many intersections was it?
Well, they put it out for bid, and then they didn't get any qualified bidders for
Okay.
ours. So I don't know where their process is at right now.
Okay.
Just read that, but yes.
Maybe that'll
there's-
happen, maybe it won't, but
Yeah.
I know their original intent was to do something here.
Right.
Could we put in our planning process the development of an inventory to meet your request there, Paul? We may not be able to fund it this year, but at least if we could have the inventory.
Have an inventory.
I think they have that already.
We've got a pretty good handle on what meets current ADA standards, what doesn't even have a sidewalk access ramp, and what doesn't even have a sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
So we've got a pretty good
It
handle.
sounds like
of
we
that.
just need the money.
Yeah.
So is this 36,000, is that what would do about 8 roughly? Just
Yeah, I mean, we're going
approximately.
to, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah. I figure about 3,000 per, so, and just depends on where the corner's at and how much traffic control there is, But 3,000 per corner is a pretty good number to use. So.
I would just like to see it increased, but I don't know if we can do that or how we would go about doing that. But I just think that we need to increase that.
So if we had a strategic plan of 2 blocks each side of Main Street
Mm-hmm.
for easily access to the downtown main core area,
Yeah.
do we know what percentage of completion we have in that sort of?
I'd have to look at it on the map to tell you. I mean, it'd be a quick calculation.
When we meet
can do
next
it.
week, maybe we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And see what the numbers are.
That's basically what I was trying to get at, is you have some sort of an idea what it would cost us to meet your goal.
Okay. We'll do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on State Foot and Bike Path? Okay, moving on, 555, page 160 is our engineering development review. This fund captures most of our engineering review of private development. Right now, our associate engineer that I have assigned to that does all of that work mostly. I do most of the review of her work. And where right-of-way fees, development fees come in to this fund as well. So it's pretty much just a person fund that's funded by private development. So,
Ron,
any questions?
Are you going to talk about not replacing the position that you have Rob's position?
It's actually not Rob's position that we're not replacing.
You're filling Rob's. Okay,
Yeah,
so it was
so-
another position. I'm like, I feel like we have worked you half to death over these last couple years.
Oh, I just
And-
keep walking, I'm fine. I'll be
Well,
fine.
you look terrible.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure work has anything to do with that, but thank you.
I'm just kidding.
I know you are.
But yeah, okay, as long as it's not Rob's position. I was
No,
really
no.
concerned that's what we were talking
No,
about.
that position is open. So what we did is we took a person out of our operations department, maintenance, and we took a person out of my department, and they've actually been key people that have gone to the schooling, and they have the schooling to run and operate plants, and they're gonna do that. So the person out of my department is a project engineer who happens to be running the project. He's on board for being the supervisor for that project, and I did not opt to backfill that. For one, we need to see how things go in terms of financially, how we were able to run the plant. Two, I'm hoping with the plant being the construction piece of that slowing down a little bit, that we can get caught back up to it. And three, we're able to contract out a lot of our capital. It's actually more efficient for us to do that. We're not as good at doing AutoCAD anymore, and it changes so rapidly. Unless you're drafting every day, we're not as good at it. And so you've got to, we contract a lot of our design work out anymore. We can still do some of the small stuff, but it becomes cheaper, so then you don't need as much staff. We just basically manage consultants and do the inspection and make sure we're getting what we're supposed to. So I'm comfortable with where we're at. That was my recommendation to Gary, so I'm not in any way worried about it. That doesn't mean that I won't come crying back and saying, hey, give me another person, but for now I think we're okay. So, but it won't be Rob's position. It's still open. We're just trying to go through the process to fill it. So. 571 is our next fund, which is on page 178.
I think you skipped over streets.
So you want me to do streets?
But we want to fix all our streets.
Okay.
Where's that?
I didn't
62.
I didn't put the streets budget together, but I can
do it later then.
You sure?
I just thought on the list as yours, so.
Oh, I
figured it
didn't
was you.
see it on the list as mine. It's a good thing because I didn't budget it. So 571, that's surface transportation funds. We get those from the state every year. Usually we get somewhere around $180,000 to $190,000 a year. In federal money, we launder that through the state, I guess you would, for about 6%, and then we're not tied to the federal regulations that go with it. Probably saves us 20%. So those funds, you can see, have been saved. Right now, we're using a portion of them this year for our Russell Drive project. We'll be using some on J Street, E Street, and Airport Road project that is out to bid right now. And that'll take care of that. We usually try and save them. Street projects are very expensive, so to do one every year, you wouldn't get very far. So we usually write IGAs with the state to hold that money for us until we accumulate enough or are able to match it with something else so that it makes sense to pull the trigger on it and get some economy of scale on it. I can answer any questions on that. Okay. Let's see. Looks like capital's next.
I do have a quick question.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe it's not you, but, and I am not suggesting this, but is somebody following the city of Albany and what they're doing with their proposed gas tax for their
yes.
street, funding their streets?
Yes.
Okay, you guys are just keeping an eye on that.
We'll bring you a proposal back.
All right.
That's something we're going to have to look at some point in the future because we do not have enough money for streets.
And we have a lot of bad streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So, and there's going to be only one way to fund it, and that's unfortunately through something either through a gas tax or a street fee, and that's what most cities have gone to. So. 840 815 is state highway signal maintenance. This fund is basically used to help pay for ODOT's involvement in repairing, or they do all of our traffic signal maintenance, or they did do. I think Jason Rush will do a lot of that now. I'm not sure what his capabilities are on the actual controllers, but I know he'll be able to do a lot of the light changing electronics and stuff. So that's all that fund's for. The next capital fund would probably be Fund 840, which is on page looks like 212. Looks like a lot of money. This is where we're housing the money that Lynn County's sharing with us. They are splitting the cost of the Russell Drive as they did with the other portion of Airport Road. They didn't pay for Airport Road, but the other portion of Russell Drive last year. Majority of that money comes from them. We actually have some money set aside in this fund as well to do a street rating, to update our street rating so we get an idea of what we're looking at in terms of cost. It's kind of one of the first steps in moving forward with any kind of a street fee or anything like that. You kind of need to have a ballpark idea of what your overall street conditions are, what you're looking at in terms of dollars to get them up to a certain standard. You know, what is that standard? What do we want to see our streets at? So we'll be pulling the trigger on that hopefully this year, as soon as I can find some time, and we'll get that done. There's also $310,000 in this fund that's been set there for, probably 10 or 12 years. We've set that aside for Airway Road when we do it. So when we do the West Side Interceptor next year, we'll use that money as kind of match with our SDCs in the sewer. So that's a capital in a kind of a nutshell. Any questions there on that? Okay. 845 is our infrastructure deferral fund. Sometimes it doesn't make sense for a developer to do a piece of infrastructure at the time that he wants to develop. We have this happen in a lot of cases. What we do, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can sign agreements, or you can pay for those improvements. We hold them in this infrastructure deferral fund. It hasn't happened a lot. Just sits there. It's specified for, I think, 4 or 5 different little projects. Short of that, there's nothing new or nothing changed there. SDCs are next. Unless you want any great updates on SDCs, the only big projects in SDCs this year, SDC Streets, which is 882 on page 242. We've budgeted, there's about $3 million in improvements there. We've budgeted 1.4 for a specific project, which is Airway Road. So that'll go forward. I guess we should back up to page 233. That's our SDC wastewater. $2.1 million. The West Side Interceptor is 95% eligible for SDC purposes, so obviously we will be using these funds as well for the West Side Interceptor. There's $2.1 million there, and I believe there's some in 873 in the next fund on page 238. So that's what those funds are being proposed to use for. And the last big SDC expenditure is on page I can't find it. 249, and that's the water SDCs. The entire amount, the water treatment plant's 44% eligible, 44, 34, I can't want to, one of the two, percent eligible for SDC use. So we're using as many SDCs as we can. We've got a lot of match there, so that's where those will all go. With that, I can answer any questions on any of them. That was fast and a lot of information, so more than happy to answer any questions.
And the street one, we didn't cover that.
I will cover that next when I go through the ones that I'm going to cover.
Okay, and if there's no other questions, thank you, Ron.
Yep.
And next we'll go into finance, muni court, non-departmental bonds, bail, and apparently streets with Matt.
Thank you. So the finance budget, we'll start there, is on page 56.
What page?
Get in page 56. We get into the numbers on page 57. There's not a real big change in anything here. I've adjusted some of the numbers in materials and services and personnel services based on the staffing and based on some increases. For that, I want to let you guys know that for the personnel service numbers, we had a 2.1 increase for COLA this year, and then I'm also projecting a 10% increase in healthcare costs. I wanted to kind of go high on that. Hopefully it'll come in lower than that, but last year it was 14%. We're not expecting quite as high of an increase this year, but just want to kind of let you guys know that that's kind of where those numbers are coming from.
But 10% seems low.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It's actually high for us. The 2 years before that, we were, one year I don't think we had an increase, and the other was like 3 or 4%. But yeah, we've had pretty good experience to this point, and last year was kind of a shock to us at 14. I think we're going to come in under the 10, but we're being conservative.
Oh, good.
Anybody have any questions about the finance budget? Okay, moving on to the municipal court budget on page 68. There hasn't really been any changes here either. We've increased the other equipment as we need to invest in some new equipment for the teleconference for the court system. They sometimes teleconference into Albany and Lane County, so $7,500 for that. But other than that, it's pretty consistent with previous years. Any questions, sir?
Just one question. Let's go back on the insurance. What's the time frame on when we'll get that premium?
So those premiums would hit halfway through the year. So currently, our rate is set through December 31st. So it would be half a year. So hopefully with that 10% increase, even if it did increase more than that, we're kind of offset because half the year it won't have that increase.
Right, okay.
So. If there's no other questions on finance or muni court, I'll move on to the non-departmental. So that's on page 80. So this is kind of where a lot of different things come in and where we pay for some overall city things. Our audit expenses in there. Our audit expense has gone up quite a bit because with the water treatment project, we've had to do a single audit under federal audit requirements, which is a compliance audit, which requires quite a bit of extra work, and so the auditors charge an additional amount for that. Other than that, you'll notice that contract services has increased substantially. That's mainly due to some of the projects that Gary mentioned. The downtown urban renewal, the Highway 20 urban renewal, as well as I believe the wetland mitigation is in there, as well as the city facilities master plan. So those things together, I think, ended up being most of that expense. Other than that, there aren't really any other changes in the non-departmental expenses. You'll notice as we go down to transfers, I believe it was last year, we stopped budgeting for the transfers to be in some of the individual departments and moved them into the non-departmental area. Overall, our transfers for salaries and benefits from other funds has decreased for this year. Some of that's due to some people not being rehired and where their home department is. If there's no other questions, I'll move on. So we're going to go into the debt service funds, which is your next tab, page 86. The first one there is the GEO fund bonds, and we've calculated the property tax amount to equal pretty much the amount that we'll need to collect to pay our debt service payments. You'll notice they went up this year, which is pretty usual with some of those debt services. The next one is the Full Faith and Credit Bond Fund. This is actually paid from transfers in from the Water Fund, the Wastewater Fund, and one of the Urban Renewal Funds. So once again, there have been some increases, but they're all based on the agreements that we have. And then there's also, following that, the Pension Bond Service Fund. That's funded through transfers from individual departments and the general fund. Pretty comparable to last year. Any questions?
I do have a question. I guess I'm not familiar with how PERS works exactly, but does the money that we contribute go to the big pool in the sky where all the PERS money is held? Or is our money allocated somehow so that our PERS is or is not fully funded? What I'm asking is, are we in the big pool that's totally unfunded, or are we our own?
We are a part of the big pool that's unfunded.
Okay.
We get a percentage of that allocated. The state sends us some information every year. If we contribute more, they calculate that into us increasing our funding. So while it's a pooled fund, they also look at who's contributing what to determine who is underfunded, who might be overfunded. There's things like this bond. I believe this bond back in 2002 was to contribute some extra money into PERS that increased what we had in there, and then it decreased what we had to pay on an annual basis after that. But we pay for it through this bond now.
And this is the second year of a 2-year cycle, so next year we'll be looking at an unknown amount, isn't that right?
No, the amount's known. So they kind of set rates for PERS every biennium, and last year, or this current fiscal year that we're in, there was an increase. It was about 30% of what the amount was. It's going to go up another about 30%, not this next fiscal year that we're looking at, but the following one. So every 2 years they've kind of budgeted, okay, what's the increase going to be? There's some speculation after that if the increases are going to continue or if they're going to kind of level out. There's some that even think it might go down. But currently, the next 2 years, we're going to see increases in our PERS amounts.
Yeah. Let me add to that. Back in the late 90s, the actuaries at PERS unintentionally underfunded what is now called the Tier 1 retirement, which was a very rich program. Since then, the legislature has changed the retirement system for new employees. In fact, there's now a Tier 2, and there's a third tier they call something else. I forget what it's called. But anyway, so the increases we're seeing now are to make up for that error in the late 90s, and it's to meet the obligations to current retirees. It's not for the people who are still working, which is the frustrating part about it, is that we're making up a difference from the past for people who are retired right now to meet the commitment for the fund. So that's just a little more background on where this is coming from.
I guess one of my questions was that they talk in here about this was all negotiated. This was purchased in December 31st of 2000 at between 7 and 8%. If we were to, I guess I don't understand exactly what this does. If we were to renegotiate that, could we get a better rate?
I don't think this
Or is
bond
it
is
renegotiable?
It's a solid rate that can't change. So.
And for how long does this go on then?
I don't know that off the top of my head, unfortunately. I would guess it was either a 20 or 30-year loan, and so that would at least be till 2022, if not 2032.
So this is a bond that we're paying at 8%.
Well, I believe we were paying it at 7.4%. At the time, it would have been 8% in rate increases to PERS.
And that's because that's the rate that the PERS people were promised was 7.4%. Is that how that all works?
I don't know specifically on this.
I believe they were promised 8%.
8%.
Yeah, they were.
Right. Well, in a couple of years, they were promised 15. But that's got nothing to do with me, except that I pay it. But there's no way to renegotiate that.
I don't believe on these pension bonds there's any way to renegotiate or refund them.
Okay.
I believe there was some attempts by some of the legislator groups to adjust that, and the Supreme Court indicated that was not possible. They had to remain with the commitments that had been made to the retirees. Paul, is that your understanding?
I think that's what I've heard, yes.
Yeah. That being said, on the subject of refunding bonds, that's something that we keep our eye on. Since the 4 years I've been here, we've refunded 2 bonds for significant savings. The most recent one, I don't know, Matt, do you remember that?
We actually did some in the past month that we ended up refunding. I think we came to council and said it was going to be about $250,000. We ended up saving over $400,000. So we are looking at it when there's the opportunity to refund some things. We do that. If there's an opportunity to pay something off where we have the ability to do so, we look at what the consequences of doing that would be.
Okay.
So. Any additional questions on the debt service area? I guess now I'll go to the bail fund, which is under the trust and agency fund tab. So there's not a whole lot to say about this fund. That's why I decided to do it next. Is people pay some fines and stuff as we get them in. We end up having to pay it back out if they post bail and if they come to court. So, any questions? Now,
That just builds and builds and builds.
it actually just goes up and down. So the reason it looks like it's building is because usually fines either increase, and so people are paying more in, or as we have more citations or more activity going on, it increases. You'll also notice it all kind of drains out in the bottom.
So if you get a rash of losers who don't show, then, that's an income to us.
Yes.
Yes, for the most part, it just goes in and out. And unless I totally don't understand this one, I've tried to understand it as best I can, but it appears like we hold the money. When we have to give it back, it just comes back out of this fund. If we were to actually get the revenue, it would end up in either the general fund or one of the other police funds. So now I'll go through the Parks Fund on
52.
52. So in this fund, from last year, we've increased some salaries. We've also moved, I believe it increased by about one employee. We've also moved the funding that the city was getting from the school district out of the, I believe, Parks Grant Fund into the general fund, which is where we fund these employees out of. So that accounts for the increase in the personnel service line items. Other than that, we've increased some of our materials and service expenses to kind of relate to the extra work that we're going to be doing at the school district, but it's a rather small increase.
I have to, occasionally, someone else praises the services. And having only lived in this town for 5 months, I will tell you that these are some of the cleanest parks I've ever seen, and I think that's commendable.
I will pass that on to Jason. Okay, so the next one is going to be 510. So in the special revenue tab, it's going to be on page 225. This is the motel tax. So we've actually got quite a bit more transient lodging tax revenue over the past years with the new hotel coming in. We were able to use that money to promote tourism. Currently, we've kind of had some money that's been left over year. We contribute, I believe, $20,000 every quarter to the Chamber of Commerce, so a total of $80,000. It's been what we've done in the past.
That page is not correct.
What page,
what page is that?
126?
Oh, you said
Sorry, what did I say?
226.
Sorry, I look at numbers long enough and I get a little dyslexic, so.
I feel better about you handling our money now.
It balances at the end, doesn't it?
In the banking, don't they call it forced balance there, Rebecca?
Yes, what?
A forced balance? Yeah, okay.
Just on one set of the books.
Oh, okay.
So this year we budgeted 280, and we think we're going to come up right about that.
Correct.
So this year we budgeted 280. I haven't seen enough trend to make me think it's going to be a ton more than that. So I only increased it by about $8,000. We will probably get more interest than we have in the past because interest rates are rising. But we haven't really in the past done a lot in budgeting that interest because it goes up, it goes down. It's something that, going forward, it might be something I look into a little bit further. But for the most part, everything has stayed pretty relatively the same. The budget going into the general fund and the Parks SDC fund remain the same. The visitor industry program, the VIP program, we've got some money in here for some of the projects that we've discussed going forward. And it's pretty similar to what it was last year. Currently, we have an operating contingency of about $148,000 that we're projecting. So it could be an area where if there's tourism things, we could look back and make some adjustments.
And then improvements not assigned to project, the 18,000, is that just, do we have an idea, or just, there's just going to be improvements we can use?
Those have been things that have come up, like some of the things with Strawberry Plaza that weren't budgeted for, or also some of the sign projects, some other things that might be related to that. I don't know in the past. It doesn't appear like this year they're using much, if any of that. It's just there kind of to use if needed. So the next fund is 533, and that's on page 139, where we start looking at the numbers. We get quite a bit of miscellaneous revenue. This is the Park Enterprise Fund. So we get some park fees, some camping fees. I think for the most part we've left the revenues as they were, as they seem to be budgeted a little bit higher than kind of what we're expecting. And then the expenses are pretty similar. We do have an increase in the contract services. I'm trying to remember.
It's the school district.
School district.
Where we're paying the school district?
No.
No, that's just the extra that it costs to do some of that school district work.
Oh, the expenditure to do the work for them?
Correct.
Oh, gotcha.
Overall, we also have some additional capital improvement projects. Some of the parks that we're going to be working on throughout the year. I know we're going to do some work on Century Park. I believe we're also doing some work on Ralston. I know I'm still kind of new, so pardon me if I say the names wrong. Ralston Park.
We're doing a pretty major upgrade at Century, a new restroom building, playground equipment, those sorts of things. So that's going to be a significant upgrade. Also finishing up at Christopher Columbus, the improvements we've been doing there. So, and there's other miscellaneous efforts around the park system as well.
Are there any? And then there's also the budget for the Cheetah Lake Park. It is the same as last year. Are there any questions on that? So the next one is the Parks Grant Fund. So this is where a majority of the cost for the Century Park is going to come from. So part of that project, we're going to demolish the restroom, build a picnic shelter with ADA parking. There's going to be new restroom facilities. We're going to recondition the basketball and the tennis courts, and then add an artificial turf baseball/softball field. So that should really improve that park there.
Does the tennis court, basketball include new lighting?
I do not know, unfortunately. I would assume that there would be some lighting there, but I will ask Jason and report back to you next month.
You might even be able to get grants to move to more energy efficient lighting than what's out there.
Jason Williams, he's the maintenance.
Matt, I see him every week.
Okay.
Can we go back to Cheadle just for a second? You were talking about some improvements at Cheetah Lake. Is that where this would be?
In the current budget, not this one.
Not this, but
So, but you were saying that there's more improvements that need to be made to make it more handicap accessible?
Right. And Jason was talking about doing some more next year, but I don't know what he's done as far as budget is concerned.
The improvements we're talking about to accomplish before this Strawberry Festival will happen in this budget.
Because then he had talked about maybe doing more
I think
next year.
we can do more of the budget we're looking at now, too.
Okay.
I believe he's built funds in to do those sorts of things.
Okay.
I don't know that it would be this specific budget that says Cheetah Lake Park. This is more of the just maintenance and operation, not
maybe not
necessarily
capital.
It might have been out of
improvement.
SDC funds or something else.
I just was curious. We can move on. Sorry.
So the next one is on 152, page 152, we've got the custodial and maintenance services. So this fund is funded by transfers from pretty much all the other funds. We've got 2 personnel that are paid out of this, which is what the personnel expenses are from. And I think the increase in the department/operating supplies is kind of what we project the increase in expenditures for taking over the maintenance of the HVAC system is. But other than that, I think that fund is pretty much the same as it was the previous year. Any questions on that one? Now we're going to go to page 182. 181, 182, and this is the boat ramp maintenance for Gill's Landing. It does not appear like we're getting the grant next year. I think it's in every other year that we usually get this grant. And so next year we won't be getting it, so there probably isn't a whole lot of activity. We do have some funds that are going to roll over to the next year that we might do a little bit of work, but nothing major. Now we're going to go to 820, which is on page 188. This is the Equipment Acquisition and Replacement Fund. So the revenues from this fund are transfers from other funds to kind of set money aside to pay for additional equipment or replacing things. Currently, we've got budgeted about $181,000 for the, that is the transfer in. Currently, we have budgeted $607,500 of capital expenditures coming out of this. The majority of that is from vehicles for, one, we have a sludge truck that we're going to be purchasing for about $150,000, which is going to be paid for out of this fund, but it's mostly wastewater and water funds that are paying for that. And then we're also getting a vac truck, which is about $350,000 to do some sewer project, or to clean sewers and some other additional things. We also have some money for the parks that are coming out of this, and some money for the police department.
That sludge truck, is that in assistance of us moving out that solid waste?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And then, as you can see on the next page, on 191, we've got about $1.4 million that is in contingency in that fund for future replacement. And then the next one is on 193, the Pioneer Cemetery Restoration Trust. We're not getting any additional money in. We've got some interest revenue. And I'm not sure that there's any particular projects that we're planning on doing there, but we've budgeted for some improvements if we need to make them. And I think that's all of the funds. If there's any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer any of those.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay, at this time, we're going to do a little addition here. We kind of left out hearing from the public on the list here, so we thought we'd let the public weigh in. So at this time, if anybody from the public would like to come forward and address the Budget Committee, now would be the time.
Oh, no.
Come on, Wyatt.
Do I have to sign in?
Yes. With crayon.
With crayon. I was going to say, I could
And
sign
take
it in
a
blood
selfie.
and make it count. Hello, Budget Committee and City Council. Thank you, including for a time for public comment. You saw me in the audience, so you must be gluttons for punishment. I'm a little bit loopy after hearing 3 hours of numbers, so I apologize.
We all are.
Welcome to our world.
Right?
Yeah.
Hats off to you, your soldiers. I couldn't do it. Not if it was a paid position. Anyways, I am here representing the Lebanon Downtown Association, and we're here to ask for your continued support in keeping our momentum going with the downtown revitalization. What we're asking for is $10,000 to fund our Main Street manager position, and we'd like to later engage in discussion of how we could have that going forward on a reoccurring basis. The $10,000 represents about 70% of the funding for our Main Street manager based off of 19 hours a week for her work, and we would be responsible for coming up with the rest of it as well as working on growing it to where she has more hours so she can continue to do more work for us. The Downtown Association is committed to leading and assisting in many community and city council goals, and we can't help Lebanon meet those goals without our Main Street manager. From the 2040 plan in Strategy 4, the downtown revitalization from the downtown focus area, we have a critical role in 4 action items, and those are all centered around the downtown revitalization, for which our Main Street manager is a recruiter. She's a guide and advisor for people looking to take advantage of certain opportunities and resources available for improving downtown properties and businesses. One of the big ones is that because we're an Oregon Main Street program community, we're eligible for the Oregon Revitalization Grant, which is up to $100,000 per project. And in order to be at the level that we're at in the Oregon Main Street program, it is required for us to have a Main Street manager. So without that position, we would lose access to those funds. Also in Strategy 5, support existing businesses and attract complementary enterprises. We have a critical role in achieving 3 of these action items. One of them, 5.1, the strengthening of the Oregon Main Street, strengthening of the Downtown Association through the Oregon Main Street program. Again, we can't accomplish without a Main Street manager, and that is listed in the proposed budget as a completed action item for the city already, and we would like to keep that one going. Beyond just the 2040 goals, we have a role in several other city-driven goals. In the Downtown Revitalization Program, we are working on really building up our Main Street manager as a resource for downtown businesses to understand what the program is and how to leverage it, figuring out how to get the interested people in contact with the city, and also helping them to really take advantage of that program because it can work well with the Diamonds in the Rough grant that the state of Oregon provides, counting as a match. And for our Trembles project, that's something we're currently pursuing, and our Main Street manager has been awesome in getting me in contact with the right people. I've had my grant partially reviewed by the state. They're reviewing it fully here. I should, in a couple of days, have a note back from them. And the Main Street manager position is crucial for having that resource for our downtown businesses. And if we're looking to have them to take advantage of these different programs and opportunities, we have to help make it easy for them. Because right now, with a lot of the buildings that we still have to revitalize downtown, they're existing businesses. They're comfortable with the way things are. And if we're going to get them to step up their game, we have to make it easy for them. We also are pushing for downtown residences. I know that is an interest of the city. It's also an interest of the state for their downtown program, and that's something that we're working with our downtown property owners to see how can we help get their upper floors into apartments and residential units. Tourism, we are very big on promoting different events and creating different events like our new First Fridays, which will have our soft opening one this Friday downtown, and there will be all sorts of events happening at the different businesses, as well as like some face painting, balloon animals, stuff like that for the kids. And our game plan is to have a First Friday every month from May until, I believe, October, with the May one always being kind of a soft opening to remember how to do it. For the upcoming URD, we are very much committed to helping the city accomplish this. We think it's a huge opportunity for the downtown, and our Main Street manager is going to be critical in communicating with the different downtown businesses and property owners for facilitating communication and input with the city process, and just to being an advocate for why this is a great idea for Lebanon. So to cover the remaining portion of our current funds and to grow the funding for the position, because we do need to get it up to a $50,000 position before we can complete the Oregon Main Street program, we have already implemented actions and have a major funding source in development. Despite the setback of our previous Main Street manager and having to restart in January, we have already raised over $1,200 through new programs like an update of the town tidbits, which you might have seen before, but we're really increasing the quality and the reach of it, a new downtown map that we've already designed and are working on growing, and then our Friends of the Downtown program, which we will be implementing here soon to be a new source of funding for the Downtown Association and our Main Street manager. We hope to earn $10,000 in annual pledges in the first year from this and grow from there. And none of those funds take into account our other operational funds from events like concerts in the park, holidays in the park, which we prefer to keep designated for those events, but we have to keep our Main Street manager position, so we will rob Peter to pay Paul if we need to. Now, the proposed city budget states that the budget is not only a spending plan, but it's a policy statement. It outlines the priorities of the city and the council, and states that the budgeting process should reflect the values of the community. As our community came together in the 2040 plan to state that the downtown is the heart of the community and that we care about having it revitalized and being a place where Lebanon can gather to celebrate and connect, and to help Lebanon meet the goals of our 2040 friendly and thriving community through downtown revitalization, we ask that the City of Lebanon allocate $10,000 to help us fund our Main Street manager.
I'll add some context to this. Some of you already are aware of this. Over the past 2 years, the city's funded the manager position to the total of $28,000, so on average 16 a year. It's been different numbers, but average 16, so 10 is less. So that's moving in the direction I think we've all wanted to see it go. It has been the intent all along to this point that eventually the association would find financing or funding to make it sustainable on their own. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to throw that out there just to give you some context that we have funded this in the past and to what extent and how that compares to what Wyatt's asking for. If this is something you wish to do, it would be a general fund expenditure, which I think we can probably do. I knew Wyatt stepped up during the break and told me what his request would be. I talked with Matt. We feel like this is something we could do if the budget committee feels that it's a priority to fund.
How does Albany fund their downtown association?
So Albany contributes a little bit from the city to the downtown association, but they have a economic improvement area that the downtown...
CARA, right? Is that CARA?
I believe yeah. CARA, yeah, thank you. And that's where the majority of their funding comes from. And if you look across the different sources of funding from the different communities in the downtown, the Oregon Main Street program, some of them have hardly any funding from the city, some of them have 90% funding from the city. A really common one is the economic improvement area, but we aren't entirely sure how that would work with the URD. And since that's already a stated goal, we need to figure that out before we go exploring that option.
CARA is funded from a URD.
Oh.
So, and that's, when we talk about our downtown URD, we're kind of moving in that direction. However, I don't want to marry ourselves to whatever Albany has done in the past, but we're looking to replicate that to some degree.
So it's possible that, because I have been an advocate for you guys getting on your own, I think I've said that every time, like, okay, Wyatt, but gosh dang it, what's the plan? And I know it's difficult. What do you short of, charging business owners an association fee, and some of them barely getting by. So that's not necessarily feasible. I don't know what the answer is, and if that's the answer, somewhere in there, that's great. I have been an advocate for sunsetting the general funds of the city. If there was a way to help fund out of the motel taxes to help fund some of the tourism activity, I'm all for some of our money going to that too. But I'm sympathetic to the cause, and I really want downtown to succeed. So So I'm personally torn. I would support you another year with talking about alternative funds for the future.
Yeah, so this year, actually, this is a $2,000 increase over last year's ask.
Yes.
Because last year was $8,000, and didn't we take it out of the 511 fund last year?
That was a Dean thing. I believe, you're probably right. That was the motel tax?
Yeah, and that was going to be my question, is this eligible for the motel tax?
Well, that's where we took it from last year, was the 511 fund.
I believe it is because we are promoting tourism through this position in a very big way.
But I have a concern, like Rebecca does, and I hate to say I agree with her about anything, but you'll have to kill yourself after this. Every year that we talk about this, it's next year we're going to be self-sufficient. And then next year we're going to be self-sufficient.
Which is not what he's saying today.
No, so, yeah, they always have in the past, though.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of looking for, I really want this to work, but I'm kind of looking for that plan going forward kind of thing to get you there. And I'd love to help with it, but no one's asked, so.
Gary, if we were to fund the ask, we are also contributing with the new position to the downtown through a staffing person that's going to add X amount.
It's a city position, the one we're adding, of course, so I don't think that really matches with the duties that the downtown manager would be doing. But yes, it is a big assist to the downtown association. Like, I see the LDA manager working hand in glove with our economic development person. I think that's going to be a turbo acceleration for what we've been doing so far.
But I certainly would support funding that, Wyatt, but at some point, we've got to see a sunset in terms of them getting or having a source of revenue that maintains your downtown manager.
Yeah, and, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And I feel the same way, and I was thinking the word even before you said it was that I'm torn, because I've been really frustrated over the past couple of years that this has not gone well. I'm very pleased at the new manager that we have, and I think she's doing a very good job. But when you guys came to us last year, it was, this is going to help us get grants, and then we're going to start funding it ourselves. That was the comment that we heard here.
Right.
And that was what I was expecting. And I'm kind of surprised all of a sudden at this meeting to see a request for $10,000. And it kind of bothers me, but I have a passion for downtown, and I want to see this happen too. So I am torn, but I could support this.
Because at some level, we're stewards of this money, right?
Yes.
And so at some level, if we are wasting it, if you never really get off the ground, and now we've spent $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of money that we're watching and not gotten anywhere, we're responsible for that. Mm-hmm. So that I'm very torn.
Yes, sir.
I support the request. I believe that we have the right person in the position. And really, when you look at the scenario, 5 months into a successful fit, I think that needs to be taken into consideration because we really had a failed first start. If we're at this particular point for the budget committee next year and we don't have that sustainability, then I think the city should be honest with itself, and the Downtown Association needs to restructure itself with its financing to exclude the city as a potential major donor. But I support the request now, as I said, based upon the fact that we're really only 5 months into a successful start, not a year and a half into a successful start.
And I will comment that I do support this at this point, but I'm very reluctant. Very reluctant.
I feel the same way. I know we've gone through a lot of several different managers. I hope this one works out. I don't know. But I could support it, but I think like Wayne said, we've got to come to the end of it. You got to be able to support it yourselves downtown. So that's my
I'd also
thought.
like to comment that, Wyatt, the association is never going to have a manager unless you can pay them to stay here. And you presented to us today $1,200 of revenue you've raised towards that budget. You're a long ways from hitting a home run.
Agreed. So just a little bit of context. Our first Main Street manager was a internal hire. She had been a volunteer, and we thought that she would be very successful in the position, but she just quite didn't have the grit, I guess I'll say. Was flustered very frequently, and with our downtown, you have to be able to take some heat. You know, we have some very involved business owners, and you have to be ready for that. And we gave her probably too many tries, and then decided to part ways. With our second one, we felt really good about Will, but we made a commitment to the city that we were going to be on top of him like white on rice. And it didn't work out, but I am proud of the Downtown Association's supervision and our decisive action. I mean, he started in the second week of August, and we had seen the writing on the walls and had the new manager lined up by the end of November, starting January 1. So it was a big hiccup, followed after by another big hiccup, and nobody likes to go through those. And I really didn't plan on being here asking for money this year, but it's just too important to our goals. We can't achieve some of them without having a Main Street manager. And we also didn't want to give up what the Downtown Association was already doing. Concerts in the park, the holidays in the park. And so it was a bigger undertaking than we had originally thought, and we were a little bit optimistic for what we'd be able to accomplish in a year. But we feel really good about where we're at right now. It's been 5 months, right? Man, numbers. It's been about 5 months, and $1,200 isn't a ton, but for somebody coming in new, fresh, getting oriented, and getting a more or less on the rocks program, the Town Tidbits going again strong, implementing the new downtown map, which is looking really cool. If anybody's had a chance to look at the back page of the Town Tidbits, you'll see our new downtown map. And then we're starting out on our first Fridays, and that is coming up. The first one is on Friday. And it's the first time that Lebanon's done this, and it'll be a little bit of a learning curve, but we're really excited for what that series of events means for tourism and for just getting foot traffic into our downtown stores.
They're going to have wine at Real Deals, I know that. I did read that.
So let me make a suggestion. If the committee is inclined to fund this for this budget, I would suggest that there be a motion made for that amount. And given that we've funded it out of 511 in the past, go back to that source, which would be our motel tax, and pass this by motion, and then we would just add it to the budget total as you move forward.
Do we have a motion to support this $10,000?
So moved.
Second. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Public hearings are next. So if I remember correctly, I have to open a public hearing on state shared revenues.
You're on, Matt.
That's you, Matt. State shared revenues.
Sorry.
In the resolutions, page 302, this first resolution is just kind of going over what we would propose the state shared revenues be used for. Overall, the public hearing think you just invite people if they had any specific desire to what they wanted to spend it on. I know that this is, I think we just need to open a normal public hearing. I don't know that this is something
This is for state shared revenue. The legislature provides revenues to cities, and they require for us to receipt it that we have a hearing at our budget meeting that allows the public to weigh in for potential uses for the money. I can tell you that we use it in our general fund to support all of the services that the general fund supports.
Any other input on this? Okay, do I have a motion on the state shared revenues?
Do we have a hearing?
I move to recommend the city council accept state revenue sharing monies as a non-dedicated revenue in the general fund.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Do we have the hearing?
Yeah, we just did. Then we move on to the next one. I open that hearing, I close this one, then open the next one.
Maybe I missed it. Did we call for the public to comment?
I think we did, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, if anyone had anything to say.
Nobody's wanting to talk.
I missed it.
I'm just moving it right along.
Carry on.
Okay. Did we have a second on that motion?
Yes.
Yes.
A second. We have a motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I'll close that one. We will now open the FY 2018-2019 proposed City of Lebanon budget. We are now open for any input from members or public. Not seeing any. Do we have a couple of motions here?
So these motions are related to the property tax rate. The first one is to levy our permanent property tax rate of $5.136 per thousand of assessed value, and also to levy $1.584 and $600 for the payment of bond principal and interest.
I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the next motion on this adoption of the city council, or for the city council adoption of the budget. Matt?
Oh, here we come.
We have a motion, we need to make a motion to
Only in rural America.
For 1,569 and 511. Me now.
to add the additional revenue for the senior services budget, $36,300,
$39,300.
$39,300.
It is,
And we have to amend.
And the 10,000.
As well as the additional $10,000 to fund 511 for the Lebanon Downtown Association.
Correct.
correct.
Is that one motion?
Yes.
I second. The motion to add those, or is a motion to approve the budget as amended?
It would have to be the motion to approve the budget as amended with those two items.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and I am now going to adjourn as the Lebanon Budget Committee and convene, I love doing that, as the Northwest Lebanon Urban Renewal District Budget Committee. And first, we're going to hear about the URD budget presentation from our
I
friendly city
provided that
manager.
earlier in my PowerPoint, so if there are any questions, I'll be happy to address those.
Are there any questions? Matt, you look like you want to
Or
say
I
something.
can specifically go over the urban renewal budgets, because we have not done that at this point. So if you want to turn with me to the first tab in the back That's the Northwest Urban Renewal District. On page 4 of this, we've got the Northwest Urban Renewal District, which is funded by property taxes. Once again, this year, we're planning on underfunding at the same level we did this past year. And pretty much all the expenses related to this fund are to pay, for the most part, debt. We also have some transfers to the general fund for some materials and also some salary and benefits. We have a large operating contingency that Gary had mentioned earlier, and we're required to hold a reserve for debt service as well.
Just to remind those who remember from last year, underfunding means that we've accomplished most of the projects in the urban renewal plan. We no longer need to levy the full amount. We need to levy that amount for whatever residual administrative cost and for paying our existing debt. So we're actually underfunding. That benefits the overlapping jurisdictions, the city, the county, the fire district, because rather than us taking that money into the urban renewal fund, it goes back to all of them.
Any additional questions?
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to recommend the City Council approve the Northwest Lebanon URD taxes for fiscal year 2018-19 at the rate of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes. Next is the proposed Northwest Lebanon URD budget.
Mr. Chairman, we also need to hold public hearings on these as well.
Okay.
You gotta close the public hearing on that one, and you gotta open up for a new
Oh,
one.
well, I thought these were all in the same thing.
Yeah, this chair opens and closes each hearing prior to the motion.
Okay. Well, we'll close that one, and we will open the proposed Northwest Lebanon URD budget. Any public input? Any questions from the Budget Committee? Do we have a motion?
I move to recommend the City Council adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 Northwest Lebanon URD budget in the sum of $3,265,640 as proposed by the city's budget officer.
Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes, and we adjourn from the Lebanon URD, Northwest URD. Now we're going to reconvene as the Cheetah Lake URD Budget Committee. And we are going to look at the FY 2018-19 Cheetah Lake URD budget presentation by our city manager.
If you go to the Cheetah Lake tab in the budget and page over to pages 3, 4, and 5, it covers the revenues and expenses for this district. What's going on in this district is that we're continuing to spend the bond funds that were received when we sold bonds last year to fund the improvements on Russell Drive and the extension of Airport Road and also the construction of the community garden. We're continuing the garden effort and expanding Russell Drive, as I've mentioned before. If you have any specific answers about or questions about the numbers, staff will be happy to address those.
Are there any questions? Any public input on the proposed Cheetah Lake URD taxes? Do we have a motion on the taxes?
I move to recommend the City Council approve the Cheetah Lake URD taxes for fiscal year 2018-19 at the rate of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the proposed Cheetah Lake URD taxes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes. Next, we will do the proposed Cheetah Lake URD budget.
Close that hearing. Sorry.
Is there any public input for this portion? Is there anybody from the public here?
No.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to recommend the city council adopt the 2018-19 Cheetah Lake URD budget in a sum of $1,138,986 as proposed by the city's budget office.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We adjourn and convene as the North Gateway Urban Renewal District Budget Committee. And we will hear from our friendly city manager. He's not so friendly this late.
Indeed. No, I remain friendly, of course, always. So if you go to the North Gateway URD tab, page 4 and 5, and then on to 6, have the numbers for this district. This district has to do, again, about the Samaritan campus. We have a development agreement with Samaritan whereby they initially put in a lot of the public infrastructure and paid for it, and as tax value is added to the district and we collect revenues from that, then we are contractually obligated to pay back a portion of those infrastructure costs. We are continuing that with this next budget year, and so there's not really a change here. We're just continuing to fulfill our agreement.
When is that done?
I believe it's 2028.
Few years to go yet.
Just a few. Okay, is there any public input on the North Gateway URD budget presentation? Any discussion? Okay, the proposed North Gateway URD taxes. Do we have a motion?
I move to recommend the City Council approve the North Gateway URD taxes for fiscal year 2018-19 at the rate of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax.
A second?
Second.
Second. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll close that. And now we're going to open the proposed North Gateway URD budget. Do we have a motion for that?
I move to recommend the City Council adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 North Gateway URD budget in the sum of $1,254,032 as proposed by the City Budget Officer.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You be doing some moving today, Bob.
Yeah.
Okay, we adjourn and reconvene as the Lebanon Budget Committee. And at this time, we'll hear committee comments.
I just want to thank Matt. It's his first year here. I know Kendra, I know, that's your first year, and just all the staff. Gary's support for the staff and all the hard work that you guys put in. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And a thank you to all the citizens. And we've got a couple new budget committee members and appreciate your efforts coming out here. This is not the most exciting meeting in the world to come to, but it's an important one, and it's one of our duties as elected officials that we have to do. So we appreciate your help, too.
And we
Thank
have
you.
to be here.
Yeah, and we got it done.
Yep.
Were there any other public comments? We are not going to schedule the next budget meeting.
No.
And I hereby